на коліно, своє полкове знамено. Дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі. Всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Всю кров
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто буде всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, своїй сторонці, душу тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу і тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 254 of the news. And we are streaming and coming at you from an undisclosed location, but yeehaw!
And of course, welcome back to the Ukraine War News on day 254, where we're going to be covering the past 24 hours. And of course, we've had a little bit of a change. Some of y'all may remember last night that my room came under an artillery barrage, as it sounded like that from inside the walls. Now, from what we were able to tell, apparently that was a disgruntled person on the other end of that wall that was slamming their newborn child or something similar of size into the side of the wall, creating a dent in the sheetrock and letting us know that they were no longer happy with us being there. And so what we've done is we've now moved the entire setup, which has been quite strenuous over the past 2 hours or so, to a whole new location, which is right back where we started. So that's pretty interesting. Quite a little bit of a change there. So in case if y'all were wondering as to a follow-up on what was happening last night, that's what happened, and that's where we're at now. But moving on from that, we have had some really good news today, specifically from Kherson. And I remember this a while ago. I remember that I said Russian forces are now going to be retreating from Kherson to the other side of the Dnipro River because it's the only way that they can defend the area. There's no way they can do it from the northern bank anymore. And of course, loads of YouTube and... Wait a minute, what was that, Matthew?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, for some reason it sounded like you piped up there for a second. But loads of YouTube experts, as well as Department of Defense experts and all other kinds of experts, started coming out of the woodwork and saying, oh no, the Russians would never leave northern Kherson because that just doesn't make any sense. It's not like their supply lines are shot, their soldiers have very low morale, and there's really no reason for them to be there anymore. No, that's not happening. And for the last 2 weeks, we've been reporting, and it has been the case, that we've seen a slow trickle of Russian forces moving out of the Kherson area and to somewhere else. We've seen railroad checkpoints being abandoned in Kherson. We've seen frontline positions being given up a little bit easier, with the Ukrainians moving forward a little bit quicker than they have been before, and of course casualties being inflicted at a higher rate. And over these past few weeks, it's looked like the Russians were withdrawing, and that's what we've been saying for the longest time on this channel. And it turns out that we were correct today, as the Russian Ministry of Defense and I guess you could say, the quasi-governor of Kherson that the Russians have installed on their occupied part of Kherson has stated today that Russian forces are now going to be withdrawing from the northern banks of Kherson and abandoning Kherson City to regroup their defenses on the southern side of the river, so that way they'll have a better time there. That is exactly what I've been saying for 2 weeks. That's exactly what we've been seeing, and of course, not to toot my whistle too much, but it's always funny to me whenever I say something and there's, you know, and then someone says, well, so-and-so says that's not the case. Well, this whole entire channel has been working off of not what so-and-so says, it's been working off of what we've been seeing, and that's exactly what's been happening, and now the Russians have officially said it today. You can find links to that news all over the place. Due to the chaotic situation that we've been having in the background here, I forgot to get the link to that news, but we can see that the situation has been worsening, and also, y'all may notice that there's been a change to the front line. I have known, and I have been saying a little bit for a while here, that this front line has been inaccurate, and today we were finally able to get some video footage from the Ukrainians confirming that there is at least a Russian garrison in Snihurivka, which is a couple of miles further up the road. From what we know, the front line in this area should be decently different. It should be somewhere around Pershotrovine, Trestnale, and also, I believe, Shevchenkove. In a line from there, but of course we have no video evidence to change the front line, and so for now that front line in that area will still remain inaccurate until we can get that information. But moving on towards Snihurivka, where we saw the most documented event at the Kherson front today, we saw that the Ukrainians hit a fuel depot here, and of course, due to the terrible supply line situation on the northern banks of the Kherson River, supplies like fuel is starting to become incredibly sparse for Russian forces, and so the destruction of the silo is detrimental to the remainder of the Russian garrison here. Without this fuel, they will most likely begin to have some problems running the large amount of armored vehicles that they have on this side of the river. We asked Michael Bay for a comment on this video and the explosions that we saw, and he was just absolutely weeping and in an emotional state where we couldn't even ask him about that. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip of the fuel silo exploding and on into our second clip where we can once again see the gas depot getting blown away. This time on a phone. When you see it exploding right there, little cloud rising into the sky. And with that, that's the end of the video, but once again, really nice to see that the Ukrainians are inflicting massive losses on Russia's supply situation in the northern Kherson area, and that will most likely be leading them into, I guess you could say, retreating a little bit faster if it's more beneficial for them. Moving on a little bit near Snihurivka, into a marker that is somewhere in this area, but we don't know exactly where, we can see that the 63rd Brigade was continuing to fight in the Kherson area. They've been down here for quite some while, I believe at least longer than 6 months, and so here's a video of the 63rd in action.
Прощає тільки Бог. Тому питання прощення русні ми залишимо йому. А наше ж завдання – поскоріше організувати їхню зустріч.
Now that is copyrighted music, but we can
That
see
music though.
we can see the Ukrainian artillery firing off. 63rd Brigade plastering some Russian targets inside of this tree line. Now see them loading another shell into the breach. Firing again. We can see this guy's got a headlamp too, which is pretty cool. We see the artillery still falling on the tree line. It looks like they've put a decent amount of damage into this trench line here. We see one of the Russians starting to leave the trench line. He's now decided that it's not a suitable place anymore. Oh, it's a buggy! Oh, that is cool.
That is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
It.
Take a look. Oh, look at that. That is just neat. That is, what you're seeing here is advanced warfare. When you see them fire the ATGM, when you see them fire another ATGM, it looks like from another buggy. You now see an SPG on the move again. We can now see one of the grads firing. I believe that's one of the foreign-provided grads. It has a little bit of a different chassis. We now see them hitting another tree line and a shed. And then the fuel silo. Of course, the crowning achievement of the 63rd Brigade today. When you see, of course, the multiple angles of the explosion, once again, all of the fire and fury you would imagine from a fuel silo. And so with that, huge credit to the 63rd Brigade, who's been continuing the fight here in the Kherson area and inflicting considerable losses and very crucial losses to the Russians, such as the loss of that fuel silo that we saw right there at the end of that clip. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on further down the line and towards the area of Milove, where we can see that a Ukrainian 120mm mortar was at work as well. These are some of the biggest mortars that the Ukrainians use on their side. I believe it is the largest infantry mortar they have, and so here's the video of their 120mm in operation. You see they fire. It's got a nice little ring to it. We now see him get the next shell. He's now hanging it. Drop the round. Then gets the firing pin. Fires it. I just gotta say, something about a 120mm mortar has a nice ring to it, both in the name and also in the firing of it.
Так, а не матюкайтесь.
Now I see him firing it again. And with that, that's the end of the video, but I like to hear the nice little ding sound of the 120mm mortar. And of course, with each one of those rounds fired, a decent amount of firepower is going down range. A 120mm mortar shell has almost as much, I believe it actually has more explosive filler than a 120mm tank shell. They are the same in terms of their, I guess you could say, caliber or diameter, but I do believe, if I am correct, and correct me if I am wrong here, that the 120mm mortars should have a little bit more explosive filler in them, so quite the firepower being sent down range from a simple infantry group. With that, we're now going to be moving out of this area of the Kherson front and further down towards the area of Snihurivka or Snihurivka, where we saw a HIMARS, more like several HIMARS, firing in the night. It's a very nice sight, and also it's nice to see that the Ukrainians have so many of these that the sight of them operating in entire batteries, such as 3 or 4 HIMARS working in unison firing off a massive volley, is impressive and also a huge testament to the amount of Western support that has been sent to help Ukraine to keep fighting this war. And so, here's the video.
You
can now see the HIMARS firing off their missiles. Listen to the sound and see how many missiles are flying off into the distance as well. Quite a sight to see. And of course, the HIMARS, unlike many other weapon systems that have been used in this war by the Russians, the Ukrainian HIMARS does not miss. It's pretty much impossible unless there's some kind of a critical failure in the missile for one of them to miss. They will almost always hit their target directly on top of it, causing a decent amount of destruction, of course, making the Russians seethe. And that's one thing that the Russians have been doing an excessively high amount here, because not only have the Ukrainians been hitting the Russian forces on the lines, but they've also been hitting the crossings again. And you heard this correct. Call up your family, call up your friends, because this is about to be some serious business right here, because the pontoon bridge was knocked out yesterday, if y'all remember. The bridge has been knocked out for weeks. This is the only area that the Russians can cross the Dnipro River from now, and so they rely entirely on the pontoon bridge or entirely on the ferry to move any heavier equipment across. The other crossings, from what we know, they are slightly usable, but only usable for having infantry and cars pretty much drive across, so not heavy equipment by any means. But one thing that we saw is that the freaking pontoon bridges were wiped out at their moorings, which is unheard of. We haven't seen this before, but right there, you can see the remnants of a largely heavily damaged, I guess you could say, pier on the Dnipro River in Kherson, and what appears to be is a more or less destroyed pontoon bridge segment that was being used as a ferry. And so it looks like the Russians will be seething a little bit more than normal. And now the question's being risen, if the Russians are withdrawing from the area, they can't with their tanks, they can't with their armored personnel carriers or anything similar, because they're too heavy to cross now off of any bridge, and the pontoon ferries will have to be brought back in again, brand new, to be able to continue the crossing. So what are they going to be doing? They're going to only be withdrawing infantry in the meantime, and they're going to be leaving a massive cache of equipment in Kherson, most likely, for the Ukrainians to come back and take. Now, before we move on from this area, I have seen a lot of y'all saying that this is a trap. And to that degree, it may be. However, at the same time, I don't believe it is a trap. I would have to say that this is something that is seriously occurring from the Russian end, because I will remind everyone that that was also something similar, and I'll have to also explain the PSYOP that's being pulled off here. Yeah, shout out to PSYOPs there unintentionally, but here's the PSYOP that's being pulled. The Ukrainians, when there was a massive breakthrough in the north near Balaklia, we heard immediately afterwards, this is a trap by the Russians. The Russians are going to encircle the Ukrainian forces and destroy them. Yet 2 months later, we've never seen that happen. This entire idea of this retreat being a trap by the Russians is more so a PSYOP than anything. And of course, playing on PSYOP's name again. The reason why, and allow me to explain, is that there's no way that this could really backfire on the Ukrainians to retake this ground. Yes, the Russians could blow the Novokhovka Dam. That could flood the southern ends of the Dnieper River. However, I have seen what appears to be some kind of a hydrological, which is a very smart way of saying a water flow simulation of where this water in the Dnieper reservoir north of Novokhovka would go. And surprisingly enough, pretty much all of it would not even go down the Dnieper River. It would create a brand new path cutting almost directly towards the Oleski Sands National Nature Park and destroying the Russian forces more so than it ever would destroy the Ukrainian forces. So, in that regard, destroying the Novokhovka Dam would be far more detrimental for the Russian forces that would now be preparing defensive positions on the other side of the river than it would be for the Ukrainian forces that would have just taken Kherson. And for that reason, this withdrawal appears to be entirely a strategic decision by the Russians to try and conserve the very few amounts of manpower they have left. Once again, you have to remember that the Russian situation in Kherson is not optimal right now. It's in fact the worst that it could ever be. Supply lines are gone. The Russian forces here are poorly equipped. They're undermanned at this point. A lot of these units are most likely, from what we know and the information we've been getting, at half strength or less. And so most units are not even entirely operational or entirely supplied, for that matter, to continue fighting. And the Ukrainians are continuously putting pressure on them with those kinds of circumstances extenuating in the background. So it is beneficial for Russian forces to withdraw. It would be a trap, however, if the Russian forces were well supplied, they had high morale, they were well equipped, and then they retreated in a specific area. That would make it look like it's a trap. But from what I'm seeing right now, this doesn't appear to be a trap. Once again, everyone else also has to remember that the Russians did retreat from Snake Island, and while being something of an, well, it's too insignificant. It is a rock in the middle of the Black Sea, but it is a rock right near a major shipping channel for the Ukrainians. So you got to remember that the Russians did declare at a time it was a gesture of goodwill they would withdraw from Snake Island. We never saw them conduct a trap of any kind there when the Ukrainians retook it, and we never saw them follow through on that again. And so for as far as I'm seeing, this appears to be something that the Russians are doing and stating because they're trying to make the Ukrainian citizens in Kherson think that if the Ukrainians come back through, they'll be committing atrocities and similar things that the Russians have probably been committing on an industrial scale there so far. And so with that, once again, the situation is looking quite good in Kherson, and hopefully we'll see Ukrainian flags flying over the city center of Kherson once again. And also, very interesting thing to note, the Russian administrative building, which is in the exact same spot as the Ukrainian administrative building used to be in Kherson, has been abandoned. Did you know that, Matthew?
I did not.
The Russian flag has been taken down over the building, and people have gone inside and confirmed that the building has been completely gutted. There are no Russian officials, no Russian, I guess you could say, administrative forces there anymore. They have entirely abandoned the building. There are more administrative buildings in the town of a smaller scale, running more basic things that still have the flags flying over them, and they are staffed. But it does appear that the administrative staff of the Russian occupation forces is withdrawing, which is a clear telltale sign that the rest of the Russian garrison is most likely to follow and retreat across the Dnieper River. And I see that everyone's saying you can't trust the Russians. I'm pretty certain on this one, and of course I can be wrong, that this is not a trap, and this is something that the Russians are aiming to do with their strategic long-term interests in mind instead of anything else. And so with that, I hope that does address the situation in that area. fairly well. And we're now going to be moving out of... Jeez, that was a bad voice crack.
That was so loud.
I sound like a dying dog right there. But anyways, we're now going to be moving out of that area. And we're also going to be covering the southern front as well in this segment, because it's all kind of coming together now, if you see what I'm saying. And so in Melitopol, we actually saw that a Russian military headquarters was struck by a HIMARS attack in this area just a few hours ago. And so here's the video. You can hear the explosions in the distance, and I'm sure that there's a lot of Russian commanders that are now losing their positions, and their positions are being opened up for employment. And so with that, that's the end of the video, but each one of those booms and explosions in the distance is a HIMARS missile reaching its target, and a HIMARS missile that is, of course, doing a decent amount of damage. As the Ukrainians say, the HIMARS missiles, every time a HIMARS missile hits its target, a Russian commander earns their wings. I don't really think that's a statement meaning that they finally reached the next level in life. I think that statement more so indicates this time that they've reached the end of their life, but nonetheless, it's good to know that the Ukrainians are handing out wings to Russian commanders every here and there. Speaking of which, while they've been taking away the wings of Russian commanders, it also looks like in another area of the front line, which we will get to later, they are taking away the wings of other Russians that are not so fortunate as to be earning them. They're losing them. But moving on into Kharkiv, we can also see that the Ukrainians are, of course, the master craftsmen. I honestly think, Matthew, in all seriousness, Ukrainians after this war and seeing the craftsmanship that they've had so far will have very good employment opportunities internationally due to their craftsmanship. Here in Kharkiv, we saw that the Ukrainians once again were making some very high-class trenches, what they call bougie in some areas. And so with that, here's the video. We can see that they've made some stairs. Some stairs into a shelter. And we see the master craftsman at his trade.
Так, гном без настроения, отступаем. Ну, чтоб вы понимали, капец. Не ходи, бля. Я худею.
So now he's climbing out of the staircase. And also, I like the odd singular rain boot. Or I guess
just
you could call
one
it
boot.
Yeah, the one jack boot that's right there. There's nothing else. I don't see the other one there, and I didn't see it the first time he went in or when he's coming out. And I was like, maybe we'll see it when he's coming out. But you know, it's just a singular jack boot. And so with that, that's the end of that little clip. But once again, you got to give a huge credit to Ukrainian soldiers and their craftsmanship in these areas of the front lines. One thing that a lot of people may not realize is that building stairs is actually quite an exacting process. When you build stairs, to go down a quick rabbit hole, there is an exact measurement of height that each step has to be. If one is off just by a small hair, you can actually lead people to breaking their necks by either falling down the stairs or busting their teeth walking up the stairs. Reason being is that people are, while a lot of y'all, and of course all of the Enforcer viewers are incredibly intelligent, we still, every single one of us, have this kind of like innate little wiring inside of our brains that when we're walking up a staircase, each one is going to be an equal distance from itself. And so when you're walking up it, you know, if a stair step is like 7 inches tall and you start walking up them, your brain will assume all of them are 7 inches tall, so your steps will be just a little bit higher than 7 inches tall. So if you're walking up a staircase and then all of a sudden one of those stairs is 7 inches and a quarter in step height versus the normal 7 inches, you could end up tripping on that stair and falling down and busting out your teeth. So it takes a lot of effort to dig out a staircase or to make a staircase at all, and that tells you how much of a craftsman that little guy that's down there digging that staircase out is, because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of measuring and effort to make a staircase at all. And also, you may not know this, Matthew, back in Victorian Britain, only the wealthy could afford accurately measured out steps. In poorer houses, you know, like in a row house, it was the stairs were not made to an equal measurement and also in servants' quarters in, wealthier houses, they weren't either. So it was common for the lower classes to end up getting killed just by falling down the stairs, because the stairs weren't equal length and it was quite a strenuous task getting up and down them.
Interesting. Do you think that's what happened to the Russian businessman? He tripped down an uneven set of stairs.
In Soviet Russia, we do not have time to make perfect stairs, so men just fall down and die. And so that's the end of that little snippet of the high class bougie stair. And of course, with that, we haven't seen a lot of activity, any activity whatsoever, as a matter of fact, in the Southern Front, rather than that man making that stairway in the trench. But still, it shows the amount of effort and quality that the Ukrainian forces possess, both in their skills before the war and their skills during the war as soldiers, too. They've been doing a decent amount down there, and I gotta give them a lot of credit. That while there isn't a lot of activity going on down here, they are making lemonade out of lemons, and I wish them the best of luck as they continue to wait until something major happens down here, hopefully perpetrated by the Ukrainians first. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of the Southern Front and towards our location unknowns, and starting off in our first clip for the night, where we can see that the Ukrainians hit a Russian bunker with a decent amount of accuracy, which y'all will see right here before we get to the clip. But before we do that, I've seen that there has been a really interesting poll, and a load of y'all have voted on it, talking about the withdrawal of Russia and what that may be leading up to. And a load of y'all have gone with a single choice. And so with that, let's hear out that poll, Mandy, and let's see what everyone's thinking right now.
All right, so before I get to the most recent one, I want to call off the one right before that because it had slightly different results. So the question on the first one said, do you think the Russian withdrawal from Kherson is a trap? It looks like 47% said yes, it is likely so, 25% said I don't know, and 29% said no, likely not a trap. So very interesting results. And Enforcer, what do you make of the first poll?
I would have to say, I would honestly have to say, while the majority of people believe it's a trap, I don't think it's a trap. I think that this is something the Russians are having to do purely out of necessity, I guess you could say. There is nothing about losing ground that is beneficial to anyone. And really, when you look through all of history, there's not a single time that, a single large or significant time I can think of that a military gave up ground to launch some kind of a trap. In the Second World War, each time the Soviets were giving up ground due to Operation Barbarossa, there was no trap involved in any of that. They were losing the ground because they were being pushed back. Every time there's a retreat, it's because that position is no longer, I guess you could say, able to be retained or held on to. And so, historically, from what I'm remembering, and of course there may be the odd example here and there, where there is the historical instance that ground was given up to then encircle someone or lead to a trap, but usually that's not the case. I would say about 80 to 85% of the time it wouldn't be the case. And so this retreat, in my opinion, has to be entirely for the reason that the Russian forces here can no longer hold the ground, and they know it will be a collapsing front, and it will be a disaster if they try and keep Russian forces here, and so they are withdrawing them for the intent and the reason of actually trying to create a defense position in the far better suited Dnipro River banks, which would be much easier for the Russians to do. And this is one thing that I always have to say, is that while people think that modern militaries are not as susceptible to the landfalls of older militaries, they are. Rivers are one of the most difficult things. In fact, any body of water is the most difficult thing for an army to cross. And so if the Russians retreat to the banks of the Dnipro River here in the south, the Ukrainians will make it down here, but they won't be able to make it any further. The Ukrainian army has done incredibly well, but they're not going to do that well. Crossing the Dnipro River, which is a mile wide, is a massive undertaking in its own right. And so I would believe that if the Russians did give up this front, the Ukrainians would stop almost all of their offensive activities in this area and focus them somewhere else, as it seems like the only logical option that there would be. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And let's move on to the next one, which is also incredibly interesting. And now another 500 people have voted on it while we were addressing the last poll.
And Enforcer, I think you swayed folks a little bit because the results on this one were slightly different than the first one, and it asked a pretty similar question. So apparently your argument was pretty persuasive. But the question is, do you think the withdrawal by Russia is due to tactical decisions or preparation for a tactical nuke? It looks like 53% said it's a tactical decision / retreat. 21% said it's a trap. 14% said preparation for nuke, and 11% said none of the above. So overwhelming majority tactical decision is just simply a retreat. It is what it is basically. It looks like only 14% thought it was a preparation for a nuke. I'd have to say that's in my opinion is pretty unlikely. But personally, me, I'm still kind of torn between it being a trap or simply a retreat. But Enforcer, what do you say about these results?
I would have to say, and also Philip Heipel, I'm going to address your statement here in a second because that's a good one, but it also has a little bit of context to it. But moving on to this poll and addressing this first, I would have to say that a lot of y'all, and real quick to read this off again so that way we can get the right context behind it. Do you think the withdrawal by Russia is due to tactical decisions or preparation for tactical nuke? And 53% of y'all said it's a tactical decision and a retreat. And I would have to agree with the 53% of y'all. That is most likely what the Russians are doing here, and their entire aim in this area is to withdraw in the hopes of improving their situation here in the Dnipro area and in the Kherson area. If they retreat to the other side of the river, most likely Ukrainian forces will stop any kind of operations here, because crossing the river will be a very dangerous operation with probably an incredibly high amount of casualties. So it cuts out this area from being a front from here forward, most likely. So I would have to agree with the 53% of y'all that it is a tactical decision or a retreat. I don't believe they would be using a tactical nuke, because one thing you have to remember is that if Russian forces are on one side of the river and Ukrainians are on the other, if the Russians still drop a tactical nuke, then the Russians on the other side will still get some kind of effects from it, because while the Russians can fall back, that doesn't mean the Ukrainians stay where these front lines are right now. If the Russians are falling back, the Ukrainians are moving forward at the exact same time, and so the distance in between the Russians and the Ukrainians stays about the same. So with that, I hope that addresses that question. That poll fairly well as well. And also, one thing that Philip Heipel brought up in the live chat, which is a good point, but there has to be context to this, is that Stalin's Order 227 forbade retreating. We did pull up Soviet Order number 227 before on stream weeks ago, and one thing that's important to remember about that context is that that order was issued in 1942, a full several months, I believe it was about 7 months, after Operation Barbarossa had gone full swing, and by that point, the Russians had been pushed all the way back to St. Petersburg, Moscow, and Volgograd. At the time, they were called Leningrad, Moscow, and Stalingrad. The reason that that order was issued at that point is because if the Russian forces had given up any of these three key cities, there was really nothing left in Russia. And you can see that to this day. The major population centers in the Soviet Union were within the Baltic states, Belarus, Ukraine, and the far west of Russia, Leningrad, Moscow, and Stalingrad. If they had retreated any further, there was nothing left to defend. And so they had to hold the line where they were or risk losing everything. So it is true that at one point the Russians refused to give up ground, and that would be a reason why you would see that the Russians wouldn't pull any strategy where they retreated and then set a trap. But before then, the soldiers were retreating in the Soviet army completely because they were being pushed back. And you would also see massive defeats, like at the Battle of Kyiv, where almost 1.3 million Russian soldiers surrendered because they had been surrounded. So that loss of land then was not in some kind of attempt to create a trap. It was entirely because they had been caught off guard and they were being pushed back. Also, due to the effects of the Great Purge that occurred just years before the war, there was no experienced cadre of officers within the Soviet army to keep things in check as best as possible. And so that also led to the Soviet army's defeat in the early months of the war. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Great point, Philip Heipel. But there is a little bit of a context in terms of the years and when things were occurring at that point in the war. And so with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. Wanted to make sure to cover that because it was a good point. And so with that, before we move on out of the polls and move on into the location unknowns in this first clip of the Ukrainians wiping out a Russian bunker, which was a pretty interesting one, let's address 3 questions from the chat because I've seen some pretty interesting ones come in. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and up first from our super chats, we have a $35 donation from I Hate Mondays. And I have to agree with that username. Mondays do suck. But anyways, they say, I would also like to find a question from the chat. Keep up the great work, boys, and Bayraktar.
And I thank you so much for the support. I hate Mondays. And I gotta tell y'all something. Usually people hate Mondays because that's the day they have to go back to work, on the usual work week, Monday to Friday, you get Saturday and Sunday off. I gotta be honest with y'all, I like Mondays because it's a day off for me, but at the same time I hate them because both Matthew and me, we get so wired up doing this 6 days a week that when Monday comes around, it's like we live life without a purpose for that day. We're just existing for the next day when the streams start again, but it is still a great break. It allows us a little bit of a mental reprieve because doing this constantly on top of college is pretty strenuous and tiresome, so it's good in that way, but I also, too, hate Mondays a little bit. It's kind of a love-hate relationship with that. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on to a live chat sponsored by none other than I Hate Mondays. And so with that, what do we got?
All right, and the live chat question goes to Richard Quick, who says, how is the Kerch Railway Bridge? Is it still out, or has it been repaired?
The Kerch Railway Bridge, as far as we knew last time, and we'll actually zoom in on it on Google Maps because we can see it better there. As far as we know last time, a very precise HIMARS missile went whoop and hit right in the center of the bridge, and somehow that exact missile, it could have been multiples, but we could only see one visible hit. Somehow, by an act of God, it split the bridge in two, and both ends started to recede a little bit towards the shoreline. The gap was about a foot wide the last we saw. It's probably widened out even more from then. But as far as we know, we've never heard any news that this railway bridge has been repaired. And so at the moment, this railway bridge has been entirely knocked out for both railway and road traffic, because while it's a railway bridge, you can use these bridges for road traffic as well in an emergency situation. But as far as we know, it's been knocked out entirely in both regards, and it has not been fixed yet. That kind of repair is unbelievably difficult. You have to get both.
Is that the Kerch?
Oh, wait a minute. Is he talking about the railroad bridge here or the Kerch railroad bridge down near Kerch?
He said the Kerch railway bridge.
Oh, crap. Okay. Real quick on that one.
Also, by the way, I didn't know that. I saw it in the live chat, so I figured I'd call it out.
That's fine. I apparently misunderstood because I was focused on Kherson still. But moving down to Kerch, both of them start with a K, and I think that's where the mental lapse in the answer came from. But still, to answer this question, which is still equally important, the repairs that they had to do to the railroad ties and such things did not appear to be that difficult. I would assume at this point that it has been repaired and rail traffic is starting to run over the bridge again. However, keep this in mind, it's probably limited railroad traffic. The bridge that crosses on, let's see if we can get a street view. Oh, wait a minute. What's this? Oh, what? Huh. I don't know what that is. So let's see if I can show this here on a picture. So as you can see, we're on the road bridge here in 2021, and you can see the railroad bridge right over here. And from what we were able to tell a while ago, the explosion happened a little bit way down from the signal box, a little bit further down. And from what we could tell there, the fire was quite strenuous, especially since oil cars were the ones that caught on fire. The temperature got high enough that it could have untempered the steel that this bridge is made out of. Unlike the road bridge, this one is just truly made out of tempered steel. And once it gets to a certain temperature, it becomes untempered, which makes the steel a lot more brittle, and it can't carry the same weight it did before. And so for that reason, while it could carry rail traffic, it's probably rail traffic having to travel at a much slower speed with lighter loads and a lot less of it. So for that reason, we've marked our rail corridors here on this map. And in case if y'all were wondering, what is this weird little spindly looking network of red and green lines here in southern Ukraine? This maps out the railroad connections that the Kherson area has right now, and we still have the ones coming from the Kerch Bridge marked in red because they are still limited traffic most likely. We'll never get an honest answer from the Russians on that to really gauge how well the rail traffic is, what the density of it and frequency of it is, but I can tell y'all based off of just layman and logic and knowing that this bridge is made out of tempered steel and it was damaged due to the heat alone, it is still most likely being hindered due to that reason. And so with that, I hope that addresses the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Without viewers like you throwing in support, it's not possible to run these streams, and it's the only way we're able to support them. Of course, not to go through that whole spill, but I feel like it's a lot better to not force y'all to watch an ad because that's incredibly annoying and also looks cheap. I believe it's a lot better for people to enjoy this stream free, completely free. They don't even have to give up 15 seconds of their time to watch an ad, and if y'all do enjoy it, y'all can support it to whatever degree y'all want, and y'all get to decide how much this channel is worth to y'all. And so I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we'll be moving into the location unknowns and the Ukrainians wiping out that bunker.
All right, so up next, let's see here. Also, real quick, before I get to the next one, I want to say, folks, thank you for hitting the like button. We have 3,000 likes this early in the stream, which is very rare. That's quite a few likes, and I do appreciate it very much. And also, if you haven't hit that like button, please do so. Maybe we can reach a record tonight. I don't know what's inspiring y'all to hit it so, frequently tonight, but that's pretty cool. Enforcer, what do you think?
Well, for my thoughts on the like button, this is about the highest amount I have seen the like button been hit recently. We have a live viewership right now of 6,800 of y'all. It's getting up towards 6,900 right now. And we have 3,126 likes right now. If y'all hit the like button, it helps out this channel a lot and it helps YouTube to spread us to more people. It helps the Lee Spring Army to grow, helping our fundraisers to grow, helping to spread the message of the Lee Spring Army more, helping us to grow more, and then help out the fundraisers. It's a circular cycle. And right now, wow, goodness, we just got 300 likes right there. Good
Dang,
Lord.
we're up to 3.4 thousand. That's wild. That's really, truly wild.
And now we've got another 100. If y'all hit the like button, it helps out a lot. I know that a lot of y'all may think, man, it's just a little simple click. But that simple click helps out this channel a whole load. And of course, one other thing I'd like to say is hitting the subscribe button helps out a lot. We never plug the subscribe button in stream, but I have been told that it helps out with subscribership numbers. And so, of course, just to say it right now, a merciless plug, which we probably won't pull often, but if y'all do like this channel, please make sure to subscribe.
Oh, wait. I've been told what it is. PsyOps, it didn't even register in my mind a second ago, but PsyOps has been plugging the like button in the live chat like crazy tonight. And I think that's the only reason why it's so high. Because PsyOps has been absolutely going crazy.
We've gotten up to 4,000 likes now. PsyOps, whatever the world you're doing, that is incredible. And also, thank you so much to everyone who is clicking. We've gotten up to 4,123 now. It's going up by hundreds now. And so I thank everyone so much for hitting the like button, but we won't harp on that too much. Just please, if you do enjoy the channel and you haven't subscribed and you haven't clicked the like button, hit the like button and subscribe because it helps this channel to be promoted to more people on YouTube to let them see the news and then, of course, spread the word more. And then that helps out our Sunday fundraisers a whole load, which are coming up again. But with that, it is now time to address the last question. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this one goes to Tangan, who puts in a $47 donation and says, press the like button, everyone. There's a huge emphasis on the like button tonight. And thank you, Tangan, for that support.
And thank you so much for the support, Tangan Brigary. Of course, Tangan Brigary, which he used to be called Tangan Brigary, I can't get it out of my head. He's now just Tangan. He lives in Norway. And so, of course, I thank you so much for the support. Also, huge shout out to our Norwegian Brigade and the Lee Spring Army. Not a large amount of y'all, but I still love to know that there is a massive detachment of Lee Spring Army members everywhere there are around the world. There wasn't one in the apartment that we were running the stream in last night. They weren't a fan. They were sitting over there on the other side of the wall. Hey, Hagoim!
They went berserk.
They went berserk. And of course, I do kind of understand because if you can hear us through the walls, I can kind of get that they were probably dealing with that for almost a whole week and a half at that point. They had just lost it and went complete. Well, I can't say that on YouTube, but they went absolutely bonkers. So I can kind of get that. So that's why we moved so quickly because I was like, they do kind of have a valid complaint. We are kind of loud. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Tangan. And also, everyone hit that like button. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of this question segment. And thank you so much once again to all of y'all who supported this channel. Y'all help this thing to keep running. And without viewers like y'all who support this channel so much, it's not possible for us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, we're now finally going to be moving on to the next segment of news where we saw that the Ukrainians hit a Russian bunker. And they hit it quite well. Also, real quick, everyone, while we watch this clip of the Ukrainians decimating this bunker, if you would like to share what division of the LSA you're from by country, you can also throw in city. Don't throw in your exact home address, though. Don't ever do that on the internet. That's not safe. But if you want to say what country you're from, put in LSA like UK or USA or Canada or Germany or Japan. I would love to know where all of the Lee Spring Army members are from. But with that, here's a video of the Ukrainians really giving it to this bunker. When you see one Russian hanging out at the bunker entrance, we can now see two of them. When you see him trying to shoot the drone, but that's not really going to help out much. No, it's not going to help out much at all. Because you see, this thing's a spotter. It's not going to drop a bomblet on them. Come on, that's below this kind of drone. It's calling in artillery, which is a lot more power. Well, actually, correction. It is dropping bomblets. I got this one mixed up with another one I saw, and I think I couldn't show it. Also, look at this, man. This is like some kind of odd special effects. Also, good lord, everyone's from everywhere. We got Netherlands, we got Texas, we got Washington, Jordan. Jordan? In the Middle East. Jordan Marsh. That just clicked in my head. But gosh, y'all are from everywhere. That is actually crazy to see how many places y'all are from. A lot of Texan viewers I'm seeing. Man, you know, Psyops must be pissing all of them off. Hey, Psyops, get him, stick him. But anyways, I got this one mixed up with another one that I did not show on stream. And also, did you notice, Mandy, that this bomblet fell in the doorway of the bunker and somehow caused an ammo detonation like 20 yards away?
I didn't actually notice. Let's see.
Wait a minute, let me go back. We missed it there. The bomblet falls, explodes, and then the ammunition blows up over here. It's like, what happened? We now see the drone flying off, but doing a good bit of work. And with that, that's the end of the video, and it's nice to see that the Ukrainian drones, while not calling in artillery like I thought this clip would show, that one was NSFW because I remember the video I watched, it called in artillery, and there was a guy near a similar bunker. He wasn't in it. It was like a trench attached to the front of it, and an artillery shell hit right in the trench, and this guy went flying out of the trench. Like, he would turn into a pinwheel, pretty much. So that's why I couldn't show that one. I got that one mixed up in my head. But still, pretty impressive to see that they are inflicting a decent amount of damage on these bunkers. Moving on into the next clip of Location Unknown News, we can once again see that the Russians pride themselves on the TOS Thermobaric firing off its rockets. And so, here's the video of the TOS doing its thing, but of course, it is not long for this world. The Ukrainians will most likely take it out soon. Oh, we got one from Wales. Liam Sheridan is from Wales. That's cool.
Yeah, we actually have a few from Wales in the live chat.
Yeah, that's really cool. Just in case y'all don't know, I'm not going to say my exact last name, but our family's origins are from Wales. And DNA-wise, surprisingly enough, while being in America, our family, for over like 200 years or so, we're still like 70% Welsh, and the rest of us is everything else in Britain. So it's really cool. But anyways, we can see that the TOS, of course, was hitting its targets, and of course, the thing in its own right is a little bit of a questionable, I guess you could say, vehicle. Firing off thermobaric weapons these days seems to be going a little out of style, but to the Russians it is nothing but vogue. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip of Location Unknown News, where we can see, for the first time ever, we saw these things sent into Ukraine a while ago, that is Zuzana SPG, and I'll show you all this thing here. Zuzana, which is made by Slovakia, has finally been put in use. These things are incredibly interesting and incredibly odd looking from a conventional perspective. It is a wheeled SPG with a turret that is centrally placed on the vehicle and of course has a normal forward driver's cab. It's really odd looking, but it is pretty neat as well. And for the first time ever, we saw that the Ukrainian crew has been trained well enough that they are now using the Zuzana for the first time ever on the Ukrainian front lines. And so here's the video, and once again, a huge credit to the Slovakians, which have provided this SPG free of charge to the Ukrainians from what we know. Wait a minute, did you see that, Matthew? Did you see the absolute, like, force and strength in those hydraulics? Look at that on the screen. That thing just whipped that shell around like it was a baby, like it was just a toy. Look at that. Goodness, like, that right there is insane. These shells weigh a decent bit, and to see something just flip one around like that, that is quite impressive. We now see it doing everything automated, ramming the shell home, now ramming the charge home. All of this is being done without a single person involved in the process. The gun's now ready to fire.
У нас все добре, можемо стріляти. Постріл.
I mean, now when you see the gun fire. And isn't this thing just incredible or what? Like, the whole entire process is done automatically. This guy's just sitting in a little box on the side of the turret, operating the whole thing from in there. That's just insane.
But wait a minute, is it a like autonomous vehicle or something? Is it new?
It's not exactly new. The Slovakians have been upgrading this thing a pretty good bit. But this thing first entered service in 1998. So once Slovakia was an independent country, but still, the technology we're seeing being used in this thing is impressive. Like, for example, from what we can tell, this little door, you can hardly see it, opens up into a cab, which this guy is sitting in. The gun loads itself automatically. It looks like the gun itself is exposed to the elements, because when we see it on this video here, and he gets out of the turret for a second to look down in there. Oh, wait a minute, we missed it. You can see right here the breach where the camera was. You can see the charges and the shells held in there. So it is like an open-air gun. But this guy's just sitting in the turret. They turn the turret. I guess, of course, everything involved with that is done by machine, done by hydraulics instead of by manpower. The loading of the gun's done by manpower. The only thing, well, the loading of the gun's done automatically, not by manpower. The only thing that involves human effort is telling the gun what direction to look at, what elevation to be put at, and when to fire. And that's the only thing that the crew has to do on this SPG, which is incredible.
Now, can you imagine, like, how many people have probably gotten caught up in that machinery? Like, just looking at that, I'm just thinking about all the injuries and, you know, that would have to be like a top 10 way to die, I think.
Well, probably not many, honestly, because you would have to somehow climb over the turret and then into the internal mechanisms of the gun to have that happen.
What if something jammed and somebody crawled down there and to, like, you know, loosen it up, and then, you know, the thing starts moving again? That would be like, shoo.
Well, I'm sure if there's a failure like that, to just turn off the whole thing, the hydraulics and all that, and then they climb in there. Because I'm sure,
you know people. They don't turn it off.
That's true.
They go right in there.
In case of y'all don't know, a lot of people, and this is why Matthew's saying this, a lot of people in Alabama die in industrial machinery for one reason or another. Like, for example, I believe it was just a month ago, that one guy was cleaning some kind of a meat grinding machine or something here at some kind of food plant, and he fell in it, and for some reason, someone turned it on while he was trying to get out, and he got mangled. Well, he got killed. He also got mangled by the machine. So that's why we're saying this, because here in Alabama, a lot of workplace safety incidents like that happen often. So I'm sure that it happens here and there. Not often, though. There's only 16 of these things in service with the Slovakians. So it's not like there's a lot of them around just to have mishaps and screw-ups like that. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Zuzana, and of course, really cool to see that the Ukrainians have given the Slovakians have given the Ukrainians such an interesting piece of kit. Moving on into the next clip, we also saw that it happened again! It happened again! The Russians made another freaking open-air ammo depot literally on the road, and the Ukrainians destroyed it. And so here's the video. Also, I love the low-key rap music. Yeah, the trap remix going on in the background. And of course, the Russians, as usual, like idiots, have placed all the mines on the side of the road. The Ukrainians, all they have to do is drop a bomblet on it, and the whole thing goes up like a nuclear bomb.
Dang.
That is
I'm honestly still glad the Russians use that technique, because I like the way they place it right on the side of the road. Yeah. It works out very well.
It works out really well. I wonder what kind of crater it left on the road. Oh my god, that that took out the road, like the whole road. Goodness,
Dang.
That is
crazy.
Like, jeez, that's nuts. But I like to see that the Russians still keep up with the conventional ways of laying out mines in the open air on a road for the Ukrainians to easily find and destroy. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the small thermonuclear explosion that has now occurred in some unknown location in Ukraine, and we're now going to be moving to our second to last bit of location unknown news, where we can see that the Ukrainians got some new kitchen utensils. Now, y'all see the caption on this post? It's a funny one, because it says that the Ukrainian soldier is doing something with a grenade, but it's not wrong, actually, by actual wordage. He is beating meat with a grenade on a stick. Also, we gotta mute that. But you see right here, he's put a pineapple grenade, like an F1. They've taken all the explosive filler out of it, and also the, I guess you could say, the handle and I guess you could say the pin off. And they've created this thing into one of those meat tenderizers. And they're now beating what appears to be chicken breasts with it.
He has that like honey stick that what's that character on the side of the food box has?
The honey nut Cheerios bee.
Yes,
yeah,
that same honey stick.
No, wait, hang on, let's pull that up. Honey nut Cheerios bee. It looks like a lot of people have been pulling that up. So let's see if we can find that freaking bee. Yeah, there it is. It's right there.
Yes,
yeah, that's it. That's
it.
literally what this man's got. We're gonna name this man Mr. Honey Nut Cheerios from now on, because this man's got like the cholesterol-free, magically delicious but tasteless cereal, and he's got the thing to do it with. Also, by the way, I don't think they're just tenderizing that chicken. I think they're liquefying it from the looks of it. Like, that is literally just pulverizing that chicken into like just mush. But hey, if it gets the job done, it gets the job done, eh? I can't really judge. This is going to be used on the next episode of Cooking with Babish. And so
Yes.
that's the end of that clip. And I honestly
I thought it was binging.
Oh yeah, it is Binging with Babish. Yeah, you're right. And also, this will be on the next episode of Gordon Ramsay. Also, I didn't know you watched that show, Matthew.
I didn't, but I've seen the name somewhere.
Yeah, but I gotta say, I mean, like, luckily it's not Minging with Babish. Like, it's Binging with Babish. Babish makes some good food on this channel. I gotta give him a huge shout out for that. Also, he's got like what, 6 million subscribers. Anyways, with that, it's now time to get on to the news y'all have all been waiting for. Of course, the only bit that gets a skull and crossbones on this channel every single day whenever it's put up, the casualty report. So let's go and see what the Russians are doing today. Ooh! They aren't doing good. Once again, the late war numbers of 730 troops being lost in a single day doesn't really show a lot of good things happening. 20 tanks lost and 27 APCs lost is also not good. That means that an entire BTG, well, 2 BTGs worth of tanks have been destroyed, along with an entire BTG's worth of armored personnel carriers has been destroyed today alone. Another 22 artillery pieces were destroyed, 3 MLRSs, no anti-aircraft vehicles, no new planes, no new helicopters. That'll be updated. The planes, there was another one that was taken down today. No new boats, 4 drones, a special equipment vehicle, 9 supply trucks, and no new cruise missiles. However, the losses of tanks, armed personnel carriers, artillery pieces, and troops alone suggest that the Russians are still taking incredibly high casualties, and they're not gaining anything from it. They are still, at this moment, losing on all fronts. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of the location unknowns and further down towards the northeastern front. And just to make sure we got a nice little balance, moving to the northeastern area, we have seen that a tank has been destroyed in Kharkiv by the Ukrainians, and quite well. So let's take a look at how they do it. Oh, wait a minute! Hey, wait a minute! They're dropping kitchen utensils on tanks now. What's up with this?
Wow. It's like one of those old school pineapple grenades.
Yeah, an F1 grenade. They dropped it inside of the tank, it exploded, and it's now set the tank on fire. Now, by Russian standards, that would be a ghetto bomb, and still by Ukrainian standards, seeing the quality that they put out, it is a ghetto bomb. However, somehow, they made a hole-in-one with a ghetto bomb, it blew up, and now they've caused the tank to catch on fire. So while that is pretty chinch to make an F1 ghetto bomb, if it works, and the Ukrainians pulled it off, and it actually worked. So I gotta give them credit where credit's due. When you see the tank's now turned into a nice roaring flame. And I guess you could say that the tank has been tenderized.
Would you like some pineapple with your chicken?
Ew. What?
Like
Listen.
the pineapple grenade with the chicken?
Listen, man, pineapple only goes on pizza. I'm waiting for the battle to
Nah,
start.
it doesn't go on anything, actually.
What
It
are
goes
you,
by itself.
what are you talking about, Matthew? We've eaten pineapple pizza just like weeks ago.
I can't stand it.
Matthew's lying with y'all. Anyways, with that, that's the end of the clip, and it looks like the Russians were dragging off sleeping Russians. It looks like the Russians decided after such a strenuous day it was time to take a nap, and so they did, and another Russian tank was lost to the burning flame of a ghetto bomb. With that, we're now going to be moving further down the front line and rearwards, a little bit a ways away into the Luhansk area of the liberated regions, to see this Ukrainian Mi-8 flying over some houses. But before we do, I've seen that Matthew has thrown up some pretty interesting polls. One of them is still gathering up votes, and a lot of them. But before we get to that one, I believe there was another one beforehand. So let's hear that poll, because a load of y'all, like 1,600 of y'all, voted on that poll, and I want to hear what y'all are thinking right now. And so with that, let's hit it, Matthew.
So the one we have up right now is actually the only one that has been put up since the last segment. So this one says, do you think the autoloader in the automated vehicle is innovative? It looks like 75% said it is very useful, 15% said I don't know, and 10% said no, it probably breaks down often. Now for me, it looks pretty cool, and it looks like it'd be very useful when it works, but it looks like a lot more parts that could potentially break down, and you don't want that happening on a battlefield. But that's just my take. I prefer simplicity, especially in a war situation. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I prefer advanced tech like the autoloader, so I would have to agree with the large majority of y'all. It's incredibly useful, and that's the direction that technology is always going in. We don't see the rugged man, working anymore in a car factory, because that car factory has now been overtaken entirely with machines, with a few managers here and there, and some workers every once in a while on the assembly line to produce the parts that the machines cannot do yet, but I guarantee you, give it time, they will also be replaced by machines as well. The direction that humanity is always moving in all sectors is to try and remove manpower from the equation and replace it with machinery. That's been how it is since the Industrial Revolution began almost over 200 years ago at this point. And so in that regard, I would have to say that the military should also be moving in that direction as well, and we should be trying to remove the excessive use of manpower wherever possible. And so that Zuzana SPG, I think, is moving in a great direction. I think that autoloaders like that should become commonplace across most modern militaries, because one thing about an autoloader, there are drawbacks to them sometimes, like with T-72s. Their autoloader is somewhat inefficient sometimes, and also very archaic, and due to how it has to be set up, it leads to the tank having a fatal flaw. But on others, it does make the reloading process a constant rate. You will never have a loader get tired and the reload rate starts slowing down at that point. It will always be a constant and fast rate, and it also makes it a lot easier on the crew as well. And so I would have to agree with the 75% of y'all that that is a very nice advancement to have. And so with that, now that we've addressed that poll, I've seen that we've gotten a couple of more interesting questions from the chat, and so let's address 3 of those real quick, and then we're going to be moving on into that next clip of news of the Ukrainian Mi-8s flying incredibly low over a village.
Right, and first up for this segment, we have a $35 donation from Avari Mandubratis, who says, with many months to prepare, how much progress has Russia made to turn Kherson into a massive killing zone, do you think? If civilians have indeed been evacuated, could Ukraine use high-yield arms like the M30A1 HIMARS rounds?
And real quick, I thank you for the support, but I believe I'm going to have Matthew reread that one more time, because it filled with a lot of information and question as well, and so I want to make sure to be able to address all of it. So can I hear that one more time, Matthew?
Yes, the first part said, with many months to prepare, how much progress has Russia made to turn Kherson into a massive killing zone, do you think?
I believe that they probably had no effort to make it a massive killing zone, because one thing is, of course, if you have a lot of creative liberty and the ground isn't a standard looking thing, you can generally get a lot of kill zones set up here and there. But however, in Kherson, there's really no room for that, because if you look at this, it's nothing but square fields that are separated here and there by tree lines, and these tree lines are the only place that the Russians have a chance of surviving in, and due to the Ukrainians using a large amount of drones, these Russians and their quote-unquote kill zones can be spotted long before Ukrainian forces ever even get there and can be dealt with by the artillery, and then the infantry just come through and mop up whatever's left. And so, in that instance, and you can see that I'm not just saying that off of that one instance, this expands on in every direction forever in the Kherson Oblast. And so for that reason, there's no way for them to have set up kill zones because the ground isn't really conducive to anything that couldn't be expected. All you have to do is look into the tree lines for signs of life. If you see it, destroy it, and then have the infantry come through and mop up what's left. And so with that, I thank you for the support. I think the Russians' goose is cooked in this area, and also these kinds of questions were also asked, just to keep in mind, because everyone's always expecting the Russians to have some kind of a cunning plan somewhere. So believe it or not, they don't, because this was also believed to be the case in the northeastern area during the breakthrough at Balaklia. A lot of people were asking, when are the Russians going to pull the trap? You know they're not losing all this ground deliberately. And yet they were, and they never regained it, and there was no trap. They just lost the entire front up here, and they got pushed back.
And also, Enforcer, it looks like Avari put in a little bit of a clarification and said, I meant within the city, urban fighting, meaning the urban kill zones.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that, Avari. That is actually a pretty good question. Kill zone-wise, there will most likely be some kind of kill zones, because one thing that will happen is that as the manpower becomes smaller and smaller on the northern banks, the Ukrainians will push them through those fields and to Kherson itself. We will probably see that the highest concentration of Russian forces and troops will not be in the city of Kherson itself, but more so in Antonivka, because that's where all of the bridge and river crossings are by ferry. And so, by that reason, all of the defensive forces will be here. They will most likely, you know, not, of course, getting into a lot of detail, we start crystal balling things, and I don't do all that well at crystal balling. No one really does well at that. But they will be setting up their normal, I guess you could say, defensive positions that they have in cities, most likely trying to get some kind of a dominating position over a street and firing down it, or just, you know, their usual humdrum, just cackles of guys that are just hanging out in specific spots, or just waiting for someone to show up. That's most likely what will happen. It won't be as pitched as one would believe, because from what we've seen of Russian city fighting before, for example, in Balaklia and Izium, their usual strategy isn't to fight in these cities, it's to withdraw as soon as they come under threat. And so I believe that they'll probably be doing the same thing in Kherson, but they will leave a small, I guess you could say, rear guard force to make sure that the rest of their forces can retreat across the river safely, at least in theory. And so with that, I thank you once again for the support, Vari. I'm sorry that I didn't understand that correctly the first time, but I hope that does address the question fairly well on a second read-through. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep alive.
All right, and up next, we have a $30 super chat from Phil Tatham, our viewer from the UK, who says, Hi, gents, from good old Blighty. Hope you're both doing well, and please ask a question from the ranks. Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support. I hate to hear that you have that disease. Blighty is a terrible disease that, I'm just kidding. Before he's going to be like, hey, wait a minute. But of course, thank you so much for the support. It's good to hear from our British viewers across the seas that they are still doing well. And of course, we are doing pretty good as well. Gotta be honest with y'all though. This lead up to this stream was incredibly stressful because I had college today. And so I had to drive all the way back to where I live. And then by the time I get there, due to how long it takes to drive to college, I'm almost out of time already, and I have to immediately start working on the streams. Then I had to sit there for a whole hour, moving everything back to the basement, and then afterwards try and put together this news as fast as I could, and also try and knock out college assignments as well. And really, to be honest with y'all, some of the things didn't really come to fruition. Others did, like the stream. Y'all are watching the stream right now. But of course, thank you so much once again for the support. Rather than that, we are doing incredibly well on this end. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And also, did he want us to take a live chat?
He did. So this one is sponsored by Phil Tatham. And the question goes to, let's see here, Christian Cruz, who says, question, should the Ukrainian army attack Putin's castle at the Black Sea? Putin would be extremely angry, but can't talk about it.
Let's see, Putin's castle, the Black Sea. I have never heard about that before. Let's pull it up.
What does he mean, like a home? Like a castle?
Putin's mansion, Black Sea. Putin's
No
house
way.
is an Italian
I've
palace.
never seen that.
Where in the world is that? Let's zoom out here. Okay, so... Oh, it's south of Novorossiysk, apparently. It's on the Black Sea, though. So that part we did.
Let's see a picture of it again.
Real quick. We'll actually hop down there and go find it real quick, and then take a look at it. So that is not it. It was south of Novorossiya, or Novorossiysk. So let me look for it a little bit more. Let me just go pull it up again. Putin's mansion, Black Sea. I want to find this on Google
That's
Images.
definitely a palace. Jeez.
So it's near those two towns. So let's go find them. We found one of them. We found the other one as well. So it is south of Tishanka. And it is somewhere close to what appears to be this. Ah, yes. It is this one here. We found it. Oh my god, this is insane.
That
Look
is
at that.
crazy.
There's like multiple.
That just shows you the
compounds.
wealth that he's amassed from his position.
Is that a train station? No, it's
Is it a
road.
private? I was about to say it can't be a private train station. That's crazy.
That would be like a Kim Jong-un move right there, to have a private train station, because that's how they travel around Korea. It's got its own private port, probably for the yacht. When you come to think of it. Also, is that a dry dock? Can't really make it out too well.
Probably, maybe.
But let's see. Let's go back to Putin's palace here. Here's a picture of it. Good lord. That is insane. Let's see. Complex first came to public attention in 2010 after a whistleblower published an open letter to Russian President Medvedev exposing the construction of the palace. Of course, nothing happened because of it. And also, it drew more attention in 2021 when Alexei Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation released an investigative documentary film about it, which detailed a corruption scheme allegedly headed by Putin and claimed that the palace was built for the president's personal use. And so, let's see if we can find some.
Oh, trust me, that documentary definitely wasn't needed to know that. I could tell you just by looking at it, there was some corruption involved in getting that.
Okay, here's the front of the palace.
Ooh, it looks kind of like shady or shabby from the front.
Honestly, it looks ugly. Here's the gardens. Actually, that doesn't look that
Ooh.
impressive.
Yeah.
Look at this. Where they're about to start singing Is Life Like Back in Those Days by the Choloma Electric Ensemble over here in this little house. I bet you they're having
Look at the
fun.
trees.
Yeah, you know, I was looking at that. These trees look scrawny and hideous. Everything around here doesn't even look like this.
It looks like the Chernobyl Red Forest to the left.
Yeah, you know, on something else, you could see where they just stopped laying the sod. It just ends in like a grid. They're like, Ivan, we're done. And so they just stopped.
I wonder who lives in that house with the blue roof on it right there.
Kim Jong-un. They're going to start singing songs like "We Will Defend the Headquarters of the Revolution with Great Integrity" or something like that. Anyways, here's the main hall. All right. I honestly got to tell y'all, this looks cheap as hell to be what it is. It looks cheap. This is still covered in plastic. You got little cherubs on the roof. Aw, how cute. I gotta be honest with you, Mandy. This is like pretending to be rich. It doesn't even look wealthy.
I mean, I guess I don't really know what to base it on for Russia. I guess this is high end for Russia.
It looks like it's attempting to be high end, and I'm sure some people are gonna be like, "Oh my god, wow, that's really high end. You're kidding me, Enforcer. That's got to be high end." We'll compare this to Blenheim in a minute, which
Kind of has a creepy vibe to it, if I'm being honest. Kind of, what in the world?
just a workman standing here.
Right as I mentioned that.
Yeah. Let's see. Here's the inner courtyard. I mean, it's
Now that looks pretty decent.
it looks decent, but honestly, it's not really that impressive. And an indoor swimming pool that looks like it's from a Holiday Inn. So, I mean, honestly, while it looks like it was probably incredibly expensive to build, it's not even worth the cost of it. It just looks cheap as hell. And when we compare it,
I saw real quick. I saw Packrat say in the comments that it's 1.4 billion.
No, I would.
Is it really?
1.4 billion. Real quick, let me compare this for y'all so that way y'all can get a context here of what real wealth looks like. This is Blenheim Palace, which is one of the largest palaces in the United Kingdom and in Western Europe. It has almost 1 million square feet of floor to it, and this is what Blenheim looks like. You can see here.
Now that's nice.
Now this is opulence. This is what an actual multi-billion-dollar palace ought to look like. So real quick, I'll show y'all their pipe organ, really nice. Also, look at the roof, very ornate. You can also see, I believe this is in the chapel. I believe this is actually a tomb for someone. I forgot specifically. You can once again see one of the galleries. Well, I believe this is actually the library with the organ in it. You can see one of the other rooms. And this is what opulence and I guess you could say upper class looking mansions should look like. You know, at least what you would expect them to look like. It looks like it did cost a whole load of money to have made, and everything about the furnishings looked like that as well. We actually went here in real life, and it's more impressive in person than it is on pictures. You cannot convey how crazy this is in real life. But this was pretty much entirely built as a, I guess you could say, a ode or a celebration of General Churchill, who fought the Battle of Blenheim in North Germany, I believe in High Germany, which would be Southern Germany, in the early 1700s, and so he was given a commission and a whole bunch of money, I guess you could say purse winnings, to build this thing with, and so he built it, and it's impressive. But that's what you'd expect a palace to look like. And also, how much did Blenheim cost? Let's see, but how much does it cost in today's money? How much is
240,000 pounds back in 1700?
So interestingly enough, Blenheim Palace today is worth a whopping 235 million US dollars for that much square footage in a palace and that much property coming with it. And that entire stupid mansion-looking wannabe thing that we just saw that Putin has made, it costs almost 4 times as much, and it has like 1/10 of the quality in it, and it looks a lot smaller. Really?
And I saw somebody in the live chat say that the contractors probably were grafting like crazy, and that probably was the case. Putin was probably helping his buddies, because that should not cost 1.4 billion.
No, it shouldn't at all. And someone said, and now the enforcer's a real estate agent, and yeah, I kind of am at this point. Because you're talking about palaces, there is a clear divide in between overpriced bullcrap and actual quality, and you can clearly see it with your own eye. And this here is quality. In fact, one thing that y'all may not know, and a lot of people usually have this misconception, is that Churchill was born of normal standing. Churchill was actually born within Blenheim Palace, and he lived there as a child. And then his dad had him sent off to, let me think of it. I believe it was Sandhurst Military Academy, and then he went on to have all kinds of adventures and escapades, and he got known in the public a whole load before he was even prime minister for a whole bunch of crazy things that he did in his life. But he actually grew up here, and his dad actually was, I believe, one of the Dukes of Marlborough. Let me think about that. I believe it is the Duke of Marlborough that is the owner of Blenheim Palace, which resides over this estate. So anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed that little tidbit on palaces and mansions and crap, because that one's not worth it. And so with that, we are going to be moving on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and letting us know about that. And I believe that there should be a little bit of an attack on that thing, really, honestly, just to destroy the atrocity that thing is for the cost of what it really was worth. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $25 super chat from Mech Tactical, who says, "Okay, legit. What the blooming heck happened last night? I know your giant 6'2" self can take care of yourself, but without slander, what the deuce happened? Are you okay?"
And thank you for the support. And real quick, to recap what happened, y'all heard it on stream last night, but someone screamed in the apartment behind us, and we were like, what in the world was that? Like, I said that on stream. Matthew thought I was joking with him the whole time somehow.
Yeah, I thought it was a joke.
Although it sounded like all hell broke asunder on the rooftop, and crap sounded like the walls shook so much for a second that it felt like sheetrock was about to start coming out of the roof, like it's a war movie and there's artillery shells exploding on top of me. And so we tried to figure out what it was. It stopped immediately afterwards. And so what we assumed is that this person was slamming the walls because they could hear us through them, and they were being driven insane by it. So that's kind of our rundown of what we think happened.
It seems, honestly, though, like, I can understand if we're making noise, like, we shouldn't be loud, and we weren't trying to be loud, but it seems like they could have dealt with it like a human and just simply knocked on the door or simply knocked on the wall and said, hold it down, instead of going, insane. But, so that's what you deal with when you're in an apartment sometimes.
So anyways, that's kind of what happened. I have to agree with you, Hoodoo Texas. It's very unreasonable of these people to think that they can get any kind of sleep. I mean, like, we're running a stream over here. Their sleep can wait. The stream's got to run. But still, honestly, that's the reason why we moved, because if they had dealt with that for about a week and a half and then they got driven to that point to start slamming into a wall, I honestly think that they may have a bit of a point, you know, because I don't want to be thinking that we're, like, torturing people in their own apartments. So that's why we moved the entire thing back to where it came from, so that we were not harassing and torturing people in their own dwellings and residences. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And luckily, my 6'2" self didn't have to take care of anything. We just kind of resolved the problem before it really started to become a super serious issue. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Well, actually, I believe that was the last one of this segment, if I'm correct, man.
It was.
And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. And I gotta be honest with y'all, for that reason, I'm not really a big fan of apartments anymore, because, like, we kind of told them beforehand. We were like, yeah, you know, like, we're YouTubers, you know, we're looking for this, we're looking for that. They didn't say anything about, well, you know, you can kind of hear people in the other apartment real easy. I mean, like, when we're in our apartment, you can hear someone downstairs come in, and you can hear them be like, oh, hey, honey, what's up? How was work? Oh, it was pretty good. You can almost hear them like that. It's like, shouldn't there be, like, some kind of soundproofing in these walls? Like, there's, like, nothing in there. But anyways, with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of news from the northeastern area, where we've seen some Ukrainian Mi-8s flying over some soldiers as they've recently liberated this village. And so, here's the video. And let me get the quality up. See an Mi-8 flying over. See another one flying over. Quite a nice sight. We see them firing off their unguided rockets and popping off their flares. And so with that, that's the end of the video, but it's nice to see that the Ukrainians are still liberating villages in the Luhansk area, and of course, the helicopters are supporting their advance. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on further south and towards the area of Svatove in our next clip, where we can see some Ukrainian soldiers raising a flag on the side of a road. It appears to have been knocked down. It looks like a somewhat fresher flag, and we can see that they raised the flag, and then they also met some very happy citizens who were happy to see that the army was coming through. And so here's the video. You see they raised the Ukrainian flag, and now they're meeting the villagers. And with that, that's the end of the video. But a nice little look at what Ukrainian soldiers are doing on the front lines now, raising flags and meeting happy citizens. And what better way to march through occupied territory than, of course, to be liberating folks and raising your own flag. And so with that, we're now going to be moving from the north of Svatove and towards the south, where we've also seen that a Stugna forced the Russian crew to bail out, gave them an eviction notice. And so here's the video of the Stugna slamming into this tank and telling them that it's time to leave. We see that the Stugna's been fired and it's on its way. And and then
Stop making so much noise, guys. You're gonna get shot.
And of course, that's the end of that video, and it's nice to see that the Ukrainians are handing out notices to bail out all the time. Of course, they're very polite. They give a nice little tap on the tank, and the crew knows when it's time to leave. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on into the next clip of news, of course, from this high note, and on into the next one, where we saw further down the line that there were some soldiers liberating some areas once again. See them driving through the villages. See folks waving to them as they drive by. We see people waving and holding the Ukrainian flag.
Так нас встречает.
So with that, that's the end of the video, but it's always nice to see that Ukrainian forces are well received whenever they run back through the occupied areas and liberate them. Unlike the Russians, who have to make a huge media shtick and get a couple of people pulled out of a basement, the Ukrainians never have to do that. People flock to the streets to see them come back through and cheer them on as they continue to liberate the next village and the next one and the next one before they reach the Ukrainian-Russian border. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this area as well and further south. And while we've had some pretty decent news, and we have gotten a lot of videos today showing that Ukrainian forces are liberating more villages, we haven't gotten an actual update on where this is happening, and we aren't able to adjust our front lines because of it. However, as we move further south from Kreminna and into Bakhmut, there has been an excessively high amount of news today as the Russians are conducting their only offensive in the entirety of the war right now in this one area, and they're failing at it quite well. In fact, quite poorly. We can see here near Yakovlivka that a Russian tank was destroyed today by the Ukrainians as it tried to exist. The Ukrainians don't like that. We can hear the breathing, and then we can see that the artillery shell hit the tank, causing a little bit of an explosion and some fire. Some people may say that this tank survived, but I would beg to differ. I don't think it survived. With that, that's the end of the video, but it is very nice to see that the Ukrainians are still destroying Russian tanks in the Bakhmut area, and that is one of the reasons why the casualty reports have been so high lately. Moving on to the next bit, we can also see some mistas from the Russian forces firing at the Ukrainians in this area, but they're not really doing much to help out their offensive. We see the mistas firing right there, driving through the horrendous muddy conditions that now persist over most of the country. Now see them running through the mud. We can now see them looking at the mistas. We now see them showing the control board. Now see them turning the turret. We now see them firing the gun. And with that, that's the end of the video. But once again, while we've seen a little bit of footage of these mistas and the few probably survivors firing off their shells, they're not really doing a lot to change the situation here on the front line for their favor. The Ukrainians are still winning in this area, and they're even using the Chechen Battalion on this front line as they are firing off SPG-9s. And so, here's the video of them in action. We can see them getting the SPG-9s ready. We now see them getting out the SPG-9 shells. We now see them doing some last-second adjustments to the SPG-9s before they move them to wherever their firing position will be. Now see them still adjusting the SPG-9s and getting them ready to go. We now see them moving one of them forward as this man is unwrapping all the SPG-9 shells and preparing them to fire. Oh, that's weird. We didn't hear the ring. How come we're not hearing the ring? There's always a ring when these things fire. Now see them loading the next round. Now see them firing the SPG-9 again. And preparing the next round immediately.
Есть, крыша, ниже! Лево! 50 вправо! Четко. Дрон. Дрон воздух.
Now see them looking into the distance at what appears to be a helicopter or an aircraft. We can't really tell because the footage isn't put into focus all too well.
Еще один дрон. Наш вернулся. А ты стрелять говори. Где он? Здесь там.
We can see them adjusting the SPG-9 once again.
Давай, давай, давай.
We now see them packing up immediately. Apparently they've gotten some kind of word that artillery may be coming in on them, and there's no longer time to fire, it's time to move. We now see some more footage. Another SPG-9 appears to have been set up. See them fire it again.
Заряжай! Пострел! Есть сзади, да?
Да, вон дымок пошел. Давай я. Да, вон дым пошел, прямо за.
We now see the Ukrainian, or the Chechen Battalion now on the move down this highway. And with that, that is the end of the video. And of course, it's nice to see that the Chechen Battalion has been firing off a pretty decent amount of rounds with their SPG-9s, and hopefully helping to push the Russians a little bit further back in the area of Bakhmut. Moving on to the next clip of news, we can also see that the Russians are once again using incendiaries on the front line, as filmed by the soldier here in the Bakhmut area.
Це може бути опять фосфор. Слухаємо звук. Сейчас. О, оно уже, все, началось.
When you see the incendiaries exploding in the distance and raining down on the town. And for some reason, this isn't being targeted towards Ukrainian soldiers that are taking the video. It's being targeted towards the town full of civilians. Kind of a little odd. I think they have their priorities in the wrong place. The Russians are so bent determined on committing war crimes that they will blatantly screw their military over strategically for the entire goal and aim of just murdering civilians wherever they can. And so with that, that's the end of the video, and you can truly see the Russian mindset right here. Just completely avoid actually trying to win the war. Just attack the civilians. That will win it eventually. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on to our last clip of news from the Bakhmut area, where we can see that while the Ukrainians have been giving some Russian commanders wings with the HIMARS, the Ukrainians have also been taking away Russian pilots' wings with man-pats, and so here's the video. See the Russian jet flying across the landscape. See it pop a flare.
Yes! Yeah! Yeah!
And now we can see that the aircraft blew up in the distance, slamming into the ground, and another one bites the dust. And with that, that's the end of the video, and it's really nice to see that another Russian jet was taken down, quite fortunately, in the Bakhmut area. With that, we're now going to be moving out of the Bakhmut area. Of course, good news to be had in the area. And we're now going to be moving behind the lines of Luhansk, where we can see that Luhansk People Republic soldiers are in training. Let's see what their training entails. Yes. Firing in a single position. Very nice. Now, it appears that they've set up a heavy machine gun right behind these guys to fire right over them, as a matter of fact. And right now, this guy, man, do you remember, hey, it's a machine gun. You remember that, right?
Yes, I do.
This guy is absolutely broke. He doesn't think it's a machine gun. He's sitting there behind it going, I am vastly decisive. I am the sniper. Because watch this. What in the... It's a machine gun!
Yes. Precision shooting with a machine gun.
What in the world are they even firing at? There's not even a target down there. It's just an open field. They're firing at trees? The LPR is so poor that they use trees for targets. Hell, and this guy is not even hitting the trees. He's just hitting the field.
Это русская Дашка.
He said, it's a Russian Dishka. Yeah, duh. No crap.
Что могу сказать за это?
Калибр 12,7. 18 тысяч джоулей. 3,5 километра прицельная дальность боя.
And it looks like the bullets explode, yeah?
Американский...
Is that Patrick Lancaster?
Is it?
It's his stupid, slimy, squirmy little butt reappeared in someone else's video. I swear, Matthew, the reason why we haven't heard him this whole video so far is because there's been some gunfire, and I bet he's been jumping around like a scalded dog in the background until now, and he's hardly just eking out this little question. Let's listen to that again.
3,5 километра прицельная дальность боя.
And it looks like the bullets explode, yeah?
What is he?
We found him lurking.
Yeah, we found him. We found him. What an idiot. Anyways, we're gonna let the video continue.
Американский Хаммер капут.
Нет, такое ощущение, что там пули взорвались.
Это зажигатель. Это трассера. Ну, зажигательные. НДЗ. Ага. Наверное, зажигательное действие. Ага.
Спасибо.
We now see them firing some more. I want to see Patrick Lancaster up here on the firing line. I'm so scared.
Ставим на это самое. Так. Очередь. Ставим на очередь все. Огонь!
I don't even know how this is called training. Like, these guys are just doing whatever the hell. I mean, like, they're not even aiming at anything in particular. They're not learning anything. This guy looks like he might be learning something. I also like how this guy has his helmet tilted up so high that the helmet isn't even covering his forehead, and that's what this is designed to do. Like, this helmet's design is solely to protect the top of your cranium, and he has it so far back on his head, it's not doing its job.
This fellow's scared of the gun.
Yeah. Oh god. Oh god. Mom, I'm in war. Uh-oh. Oh my god, he finally fired a shot. Oh no, he's fired too. How come this guy looks like that discount guy on Breaking Bad, Matthew, who always said the B word? You know, Jesse.
Yeah.
Hey,
I think so.
Hey, yo, Mr. White, we gonna cook up some meth? That's what he looks like he's about to say.
Oh.
Jesse, we need to go fight the Russians, Jesse.
Now, are these conscripts that we're watching?
They may be conscripts. We're not really sure. It's the LPR, so they're probably conscripts.
Oh. So to be fair, if the guy is scared of the gun, he didn't choose to be there, so maybe. I kind of take that back a little bit.
Maybe. And so with that, that's the end of that video, but once again, interesting insight to what's going on in the LPR. Moving further on down the line, we saw a Ukrainian tank engaging a tree line in the area of Orlivka today. See a little rocket barrage happen down there. The tank's now firing into this area of the tree line again.
Also, real quick, Enforcer, big congrats to Psyops for getting mod status in the live chat, by the way.
Also, huge congratulations to Psyops as well. Matthew asked me about that in stream. He was like, should we make him a mod? I was like, yeah, sure, go for it. And so, of course, huge congratulations to Psyops. I believe he's the only other moderator at this point in the live chat beyond Matthew, and so a huge shout out to Psyops. He's been around forever. He's been great, and also you've been doing an incredibly impressive job plugging the like button tonight. We've gotten up to 6,400 likes, and we're only going higher from there. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on again. But once again, huge shout out to Psyops for becoming a mod on the live chat. See the T-64 continuing to fire. See you firing some more. Quite a lot of rounds they're sending downrange. If there are any rushes in that tree line, they are getting tenderized. See, firing again. I mean, like, they are going to literally make that tree line disappear in that one exact spot. It's just going to be an empty spot in this tree line. Now, I'm going to stop this video right here because I think y'all get the picture that this entire video, all 5 minutes and 40 seconds of it, is just showing the Ukrainians obliterating Russians in a tree line about a mile away. I think that gets the point across, and of course, it's good to see that this Ukrainian tank somewhere in the area of Snihurivka is making sure to let the Russians know that they can't get away with existing about a mile away from this tank. They will cease to exist in a way. And so with that, that's the end of that video, but once again, a huge credit to the Ukrainian tankers who continue to fight on the front lines much like that everywhere, and help to inflict a decent amount of casualties on Russian forces. Moving on down to Bakhmut, we saw some Russian soldiers asking for help. Apparently, according to the story, these guys tried to retreat from the front line and actually leave it, and then they were forced to go back, and now they're recording a video asking anyone to help them out with their plight. And I think there is a group that can help them called the Ukrainian Army. If they surrender to them, I think they can help them to stop fighting. But with that, here's the video.
Мы являемся мобилизованными военнослужащими 252-го полка мотострелкового. Дошли до границы ПГТ Меловое. Связались с командованием, чтобы нас вывезли на территорию части Богучар, на Российскую Федерацию. Значит, нас вывезли на территорию Российской Федерации и завезли на границу с Валуек, с другой стороны. Нас не хотят отпускать в сторону России. Заявки мы писали, все сделано, нас никто не слышит, никто не хочет прислушаться к нашей. Сегодня 4 число. Сегодня 3 ноября 2022 год.
Просим оказать нам помощь.
Просим оказать помощь правовую. Спасибо за внимание.
They look pretty unhappy. Also, they all look poorly clothed. And with that, that's the end of the video. Huge shout out to the guy here who looks like he's dressed up for Duck Dynasty in this kind of an outfit right here. It looks like he's about to start talking about shooting ducks with a shotgun or something like that. But anyways, with that, that's the end of that video, and once again, it's showing that morale is quite low, considering that pretty much an entire company of soldiers tried to withdraw from the front lines, were forced to return, and now they're making a video saying that they don't want to be there. And so with that, we haven't seen any frontline changes in the Donetsk area, but it does look like the situation is in Ukraine's favor here, of course, just due to the low morale situation of the Russians on this part of the front. And so with that, we have now covered all of the news from across all of Ukraine, and it's now time to go to Kyiv for the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on a very new day, a very new week of the war on day 254, the first day of the next week. And so with that, here's the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Передусім хочу привітати з двома професійними святами, які відзначаються сьогодні. Це День ракетних військ і артилерії та День інженерних військ. Щиро вітаю усіх воїнів, ветеранів, рідних наших героїв, які служать в цих військах. Українська артилерія стала найсильнішою в Європі, однією з найсильніших у світі. Так завжди тепер буде. Попри фізичну перевагу ворожої артилерії, просто кількісно наші воїни забезпечують кращий результат. Перевага наших артилерістів якісна, майстерністю, інтелектом, вірою у себе та у нашу країну. І я підписав укази про відзначення 2 бригад спеціальною відзнакою за мужність та відвагу. Це 43-я окрема артилерійська бригада імені гетьмана Тараса Трясила і 44-та окрема артилерійська бригада імені гетьмана Данила Апостола. Дякую вам, хлопці, за влучність. Українські інженерні війська – це саме ті воїни, які роблять життєво потрібний внесок у просування наших підрозділів, а отже, у визволення нашої території. Вони створюють матеріальну основу для руху військ і для захисту позицій, загородження, переправи, розмінування, багато іншого. Я дякую усім підрозділам цих 2 родів військ, кожному воїну рідним наших воїнів та усім, хто їх підтримує і хто їм допомагає. Сьогодні протягом дня були різні переговори і зустрічі для зміцнення нашої держави. Відбувся візит президентки Греції. І ключовий сенс візиту саме оборонний. Ми отримали від Греції першу партію бронетехніки, вкрай необхідної зараз. Обговорили оборонну співпрацю, посилення санкцій проти Росії, підготовку спецтрибуналу щодо злочину агресії Росії проти України. Звичайно, говорили і про відбудову України. Для Греції все це особлива тематика. Спільнота українських греків традиційно живе на півдні нашої країни, у багатьох містах, селах, значна частина яких дуже постраждала від російських ударів. Багато греків жили в Маріуполі, в районі Маріуполя. Сподіваюсь на активну підтримку Греції наших зусиль для притягнення усіх російських вбивць і катів до законної відповідальності за те, що вони наробили проти наших людей. І коли ми повернемо український прапор в усі міста і села півдня нашої держави, ми обов'язково запросимо Греції, її компанії та спеціалістів взяти участь у відновленні нормального життя в цій частині України. Сьогодні ж зустрівся з представниками Конгресу США, сенаторами Крісом Кунсом і Робом Портманом. Подякував їм за незмінну двопартійну підтримку, за допомогу, яку Сполучені Штати надають нашій державі. Говорили передусім про повітряний щит для України, про те, як прискорити звільнення нашої території. Окремо і дуже предметно обговорили виклики в енергетиці. Російські удари по нашій енергетиці, по наших енергооб'єктах не припиняються жодної доби. Цієї ночі іранськими дронами був атакований Кривий Ріг. Такий російський терор має отримати і точно, зрештою, отримає потужну глобальну відповідь. Я дякую нашим друзям в Сполучених Штатах, які цьому допомагають. Загалом по країні ураження об'єктів енергетики є в різних областях. Це обсяг генерації і транспортування електрики, який забезпечує мільйони людей. Лише станом на цей вечір від споживання тимчасово відключені за аварійними і стабілізаційними графіками близько 4,5 мільйонів споживачів. Зокрема, в Києві та 10 областях – Київщина, Дніпропетровщина, Житомирщина, Запорізька область, Сумщина, Кіровоградська область, Харківщина, Чернігівщина, Хмельниччина, Черкащина, можливі також відключення в інших регіонах. Витерпіти російський енерготерор, пройти і таке випробування – це наше національне завдання, одне з основних зараз. Сам факт, що Росії вдалося до терору проти енергетики, свідчить про слабкість ворога. Вони не можуть перемогти Україну на полі бою і тому намагаються ось так зламати наших людей, принизити українців, ударити по духу нашого народу, по спротиву наших людей. Вірю, що це Росії не вдасться. Зараз важливо, щоб зберігалась наша здатність до спільних дій. Тому сьогодні я хочу звернути увагу на дві речі. Перше – увагу місцевої влади. Будь ласка, в усіх містах, в усіх громадах України слідкуйте, щоб не було непотрібного використання електрики. Зараз точно не час для яскравих вітрин, вивісок, реклам та іншого подібного освітлення. Також звертаюся до енергокомпаній спеціально публічно, щоб це всі почули. Будь ласка, активніше. Роз'яснюйте людям, коли і чому ви відключаєте ту чи іншу вулицю, той чи інший район. Зараз час саме таких мікрокомунікацій. Люди мають право знати. І якщо споживачі звертаються і повідомляють про ту чи іншу несправедливість в енергозабезпеченні, будь ласка, реагуйте на це негайно. Працюйте разом з місцевою владою. Якщо хтось без світла по 8 чи 10 годин, а через дорогу підключене все разом з вуличним освітленням, то це однозначно несправедливо. Треба робити все, щоб відключення були передбачувальними і цілком зрозумілими для споживачів. Зокрема, про енергетичні виклики говорив сьогодні з президенткою Молдови. Жахливі наслідки російської гібридної агресії відчуваються усіма європейцями і громадянами Молдови також. Говорили з пані Санду про те, що можемо разом зробити в інтересах наших людей і для захисту наших держав. Говорив сьогодні і з президентом Індонезії. Тематика зрозуміла. Саміт Великої Двадцятки, який розпочнеться невдовзі. Це наші зусилля для недопущення продовольчої кризи. Я дякую пану президенту за підтримку в цьому питанні, за позитивну оцінку наших зусиль. Є сьогодні висновок МАГАТЕ, цілком очевидний. Місія організації відвідала всі ті об'єкти, які згадували представники Росії, коли розповідали свої фантазії про так звану брудну бомбу. Ми запросили МАГАТЕ, щоб вони перевірили. Ми надали їм повну свободу дій на відповідних об'єктах і маємо чіткі і неспростовні докази того, що ніхто в Україні ніяку брудну бомбу не створював і не створює. Єдине, що є брудне в нашому регіоні зараз, це голови тих в Москві, хто, на жаль, захопив контроль над російською державою і тероризує Україну та увесь світ. Важливий документ, підготовлений і оприлюднений сьогодні міжнародною групою експертів, що працює під керівництвом Майкла Макфола та Андрія Єрмака. Це документ про абсолютно потрібні санкції проти Росії в IT-сфері. Це те, що дійсно може послабити потенціал російської агресивності. IT використовується для ракетного і дронового терору, для виробництва військової техніки, для кібератак, поширення дезінформації. Тобто це одна з опор російської війни проти України і свободи в усьому світі. Ми пропонуємо конкретний шлях, щоб зламати цю російську IT-опору. Впевнений, що виконуємо і це завдання. Відповідні нові санкції проти Росії точно будуть. І наостанок. Сьогодні вдалося звільнити з російського полону ще 107 українців. Із них 6 – це офіцери, 101 – сержанти та рядові, армія, ВМС, тероборона, Нацгвардія, прикордонники. Багато з них були поранені і дуже серйозно. Усім вже надається потрібна допомога. Я щиро радий, що ще 107 родин побачили своїх рідних. Дякую всій нашій команді, хто забезпечує цей обмін, розвідці, Офісу Служби безпеки, омбудсмену. Обов'язково повернемо додому усіх українців і українок, які перебувають в полоні в Росії чи на тимчасово окупованій території. Ми пам'ятаємо про кожного нашого героя. Слава усім, хто захищає нашу державу, слава усім, хто воює і працює, наближаючи нашу перемогу. Що стосується фронту, хлопці вперед ідуть. Що стосується зерна, судна йдуть. Що стосується окупантів, то вони також за кораблями. Слава Україні!
And with that is the end of the speech from President Zelenskyy, and that wraps out our day 254 news segment. Of course, I thank everyone who's enjoyed this news so much for watching. Of course, it means a lot to us that a lot of people do enjoy to find this news here on this channel each and every night, except for Mondays. And if you have enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe, as these streams run every single day of the week, except for Mondays. We take that day off, but every other day at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, you can expect to find us right here covering the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine. And real quick, everyone, I've been noticing something, much like a lot of y'all pointed out, that is incredibly odd. Our likes are disappearing. Believe it or not.
Isn't that weird? They're going down like consistently.
Believe it or not, everyone, I went and checked over the past 2 minutes, and so far our like to dislike ratio has remained exactly the same, although we've lost about 600 likes. So the dislikes are disappearing at the exact same rate as the likes. I do not understand what is going on here, because now it looks like it's gotten all the way down to 5,900. It's going up a little bit, but that is the weirdest thing I have ever seen. Both the likes and the dislikes are being deleted at the same rate, because we still have the overall same like percentage of 99.1%. That's the weirdest thing ever. I've never seen anything like that. So if you want to combat that, make sure to slam the like button, because it helps this stream to get promoted to more people. And also, I don't know what's happening to the likes. I don't know if YouTube's coming through and just deleting some, but make sure to hit the like button to let people know that the likes are real. And so with that, we are on out of the news segment and on into our question segment and addressing some of our polls. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and our first poll said, have you ever heard of Putin's palace before? It looks like 63% said yes, and 37% said no. So in this one, I would have to say I fall within the no category. I'd never heard of Putin's palace before, and quite honestly, I'm a little shocked at how it looks. But unfortunately, what do you think?
Gotta be honest with you, I'm actually in the minority here. I had never heard of Putin's palace before this war until now, and I have to say, it's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I'm not really impressed with it at all, and that's not just by bias, that's just because the thing is freaking hideous. Like, if you look at it again, it's not that impressive. I think, honestly, Matthew, there's a bigger house than this here in Birmingham.
Maybe. It depends on the square footage of that one. It looks like it's pretty large.
Let's see. Let's keep this in mind. Let's pull out, the measured distance. It is only, what? 255 feet across?
What is it, Ripley's Believe It or Not house or something like that?
No, there's no way this thing is only 250 feet across. No way. Hang on. Clear the measurement. Let's measure from the other side. 250 by 230 feet. That's it? Hang on. I wouldn't doubt it in some ways, but in others I don't. Let's go real quick to Blenheim, and let's measure that one in width. You know, just because that gives us a clear frame of reference. So, let's measure from side to side of the main building. So this one's 352 feet, or 107 meters according to Google. I mean, like, I feel like they'd have to be accurate, because this is the exact same map system that Google uses to tell you how far it is to get from point A to point B. So this has to be accurate, although that's kind of a little shocking. But we can see that Blenheim is already 150 feet wider than the stupid mansion that Putin's got, and that's just on the main building. Now let's go to Birmingham real quick, because believe it or not, there is this well-to-do guy somewhere out here, I think. Where is it? I think it was back here, wasn't it? Yeah, this one. This is like the biggest...
Yeah, the guitar house.
Yeah, this is like the biggest house in Alabama, so let's see how wide it is. 188 feet. So this house is actually on up there in a contender, and it's almost as big as Putin's house. This thing is kind of a little dated, and I think whoever had it abandoned it.
And you see the guitar?
Yeah,
y'all see that guitar outline? That's pretty cool.
Also, the driveway is shaped like a guitar, so it's a pretty wild house. Where is the Richard Scrushy house, Matthew? Where in the world's that one?
That would be over in Vestavia, I think. So right there next to the interstate. Go over to the right some. It's going to be on, I think, Dolly Ridge Road or something like that. Closer to the interstate, down below.
So,
I think you're going to miss it, Enforcer. It's like a needle in a haystack right here.
That's true. That's true. Is there another big house? I think there's one on Lake Martin that's pretty big, isn't there?
Yes, that's also a needle in a haystack.
But is it though? Because it's right on the side of the shore. You could see it when you go by on a boat. Because there's koala.
Both of them are owned by Richard Scrushy, by the way.
Yeah, but
were owned by Richard Scrushy.
There's Kalijah. It can't be that hard to find. Let's just remember what direction you had to go from Kalijah to find the thing. So you drive the boat down here. You find the golf course. Cool. I think it was close to the golf course, wasn't it?
Maybe.
This one?
Oh, there it is.
There it is, yeah.
I think that's it.
Let's measure the width of this one. This one obviously isn't a square, though, so it will be smaller, but what's the width of it? 207 feet. So this thing is about as wide as Putin's little palace is deep. Also, some people are saying that Putin's palace is 57,500 square feet. So I'm about to blow y'all's mind. Blenheim Palace square footage. Blenheim Palace is actually not 1 million square feet. I don't know where I got that figure. It is 145,000 square feet of floor space. So about the size of a Walmart. That's really a way to knock this thing down a couple of notches, but still a really cool one. And also that puts into perspective how insignificant, although it was way too expensive, how insignificant that thing is. But I still didn't know about it. And so with that, I hope that addressed the poll fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
I saw Vertigo say, is Scrooge still in jail? I'm really not sure if he's still in jail. I think he is, but he might be out. I don't know.
And I honestly don't even have an answer to that at all. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, I'm curious. Let me pull it up real quick. Let's see.
Also, while you pull it up, Matthew, someone said Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina. We've gone there before. I got to be honest with y'all, Biltmore is not that impressive. The floor layout's really weird. I don't mean to trash on it or anything because, you know, I believe it's one of the largest houses in America, but it doesn't have the same feeling that Blenheim had. Blenheim had this feeling of a great floor layout, and it was grand. Biltmore felt more like an attempt to flex just by building a massive house. So, in my opinion...
And also, go ahead, Enforcer.
In my opinion, it wasn't that grand, but, you know, of course, obviously, that is incredibly grand right there. But still, it didn't have the same feeling as other places had. But anyways, after I'm going to let you go ahead, Matthew.
So I really can't tell, but it looks like the guy might be out. But there's no telling. I'm not really sure what he's doing at this point, but that'd be interesting to know if somebody had that information. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, if you are ready, Enforcer.
All right, and let's hear it.
All right, and up next, we have a $25 super chat from Salmons, who does not leave a comment. But Salmons, thank you very much for that continued support every single night. We do appreciate it very much, and thank you for watching the streams too. And Enforcer, would you like to add a few words?
Salmon?
Samans.
Oh, I thought you said salmon. I was probably like, Sylvia, the sockeye salmon? That's been a long time.
Oh, no.
Yeah, if y'all remember that, it's been a long time since we've heard of Sylvia, the sockeye salmon. But of course, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a comment, but your support does help us to keep on addressing questions and, of course, covering this news. And so with that, I thank you so much once again. It does mean a lot to us to get y'all support because, of course, it's the only thing that keeps us alive. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a super chat from BL Parak, who puts in a $21 donation and says, just recognizing the extra effort you guys put in today.
Thank you so much for the support, and thank you so much for appreciating the extra effort. I feel, you know, of course, it sounds, you know, it's just arrogant as all I get out. Say there was extra effort, but moving all the stuff back over somewhere else was a decent amount of effort. And so I thank you so much for the support because, of course, your support helps us to keep running this stream and helps us to move from place to place within hours. And so with that, we are on to, of course, we didn't completely move today. We only moved all the setups to where it wouldn't be annoying people and harassing them in their own dwellings. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and also real quick to address a poll that we forgot about just a moment ago, the question was, do you think North Korea will de-escalate now that the USA have issued a red line? It looks like 36% said that North Korea will back down, 31% said they don't know, maybe, and 33% said no, North Korea is emboldened by Russia. Now, for me, I think that North Korea will back down. They always like to act out occasionally, and then they get back under control. I think that it'll be the same instance now. I just don't see it going really haywire, honestly. I mean, that's really a bad escalation to launch a missile into their maritime border, but I think that's where it's going to end because the USA has issued that red line. But Enforcer, what do you think?
And I would honestly have to say they're not going to do anything. The North Koreans act like they can do something, but they can't. You know, not going down that whole rabbit hole because I feel like that's just wasting breath. Look at this. We'll just zoom in on a random village. Kudong-ni. Let's take a look here. Look at this village that doesn't even have a paved road in it and tell me that North Korea could ever do anything to anyone. They couldn't. I mean, like, it's out of the question. And of course, someone's gonna be like, well, paved road doesn't mean that you can't have a massive standing army. They don't have that either. It's big in number, but it's not big in terms of technology and ability or anything like that. Also, this river is dried up significantly. Like, there's almost no water in it. Huh. That's interesting. That might be something to keep an eye on. Maybe these people are a little thirsty, which would be interesting to hear. But anyways, also, look at that beautiful compound. Boy, I would love to live in village number 2261. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you, everyone, once again, for putting in some input there. I think that they will not be emboldened because if they really look at the situation, there's no way that they can compare to any nation that surrounds them. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a 20 euro super chat from Fernando Silva. Or is that pounds?
That would be pounds.
Oh, it's pounds, actually. So Fernando is from the UK. So that's pretty cool. But he says, please visit the Hearst Palace, as Paula McDonald says. I want to see it too.
Hearst Castle. The Hearst Cat. I hope this is the correct one. The Hearst Castle or the Hearst Palace, which appears to be in California. In between San Jose and Los Angeles, like in the middle of the coast. So let's take a look at the pictures here. Alright, so pretty big. Alright, pretty big. Pretty big pool, too. Goodness. Alright, that's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. I mean, you know, I feel like this is really normal. I feel like you ought to get this with a normal cost of rent. I mean, yeah, you know, it's I'm not gonna kid around anymore. It is pretty big. It's also very ornate. But I don't
extravagant.
know. It's extravagant, but it's got that feeling, you know. It's like this right here. It looks cool, but it's honestly got kind of like a Las Vegas feeling to it. And you know, and then there's nothing wrong with Las Vegas, but the Strip is kind of a little fake, you know, just to me, and it kind of has that feeling in a way. But still, it is big. It's big. It's impressive. But I don't know. I mean, like, it feels like it's trying to imitate a little bit, because some things just don't really come off as feeling completely authentic. But still, with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, Fernando, and I hope that's a good look at Hearst Castle, which for a while I thought was in the United Kingdom, but it's actually not. It's in the middle of California. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support and allowing us to take a look at Hearst Castle, which is actually so big you can pretty much see it from space.
All right, and
go ahead.
Are you done?
No, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, so up next, we have a $20 super chat from Panama Floyd, who says, add APTA, A-P-T-A, to the opening music. More people should hear it. They'll love it. And from what I've seen, the original version is from a band called Pyrietin.
And I thank you for the support. Sadly, I might not be able to add that because if it is associated with a band, they most likely have a copyright to it, and I could get into a lot of trouble playing that. While it's a cool song, and of course it would be supporting them, they and their publishers may not see it that way, and they may come down with a hammer on us. So I thank you for the support, Panama Floyd, and also an interesting idea, but we are always scared of stepping over copyright, because y'all can see what happened to us before when we didn't even infringe on copyright, and someone went and put down 2 copyright strikes on their channel and had no basis to do so. We got one of them appealed by YouTube, but we didn't get the second one appealed because for some reason YouTube won't sit there and take the defensible argument that this is not copyrighted material, it came from so-and-so, so it was made by the government, it has no copyright, this guy's lying, send this over to him so he can respond, and they go, sorry, we don't see anything wrong with what he did. And so we're still waiting one of them out, but the other one we did get appealed. But we always want to be careful with copyrights, because if that copyright takedown request, the copyright strike, did have merit to it, we would have been in hot water because there would have been nothing we could have done. And so with that, we are on to the next move. Thank you once again for the support and an interesting idea.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Time Lord 1127, who says, Enforcer, what do you think of the Russian retreat being a trap, and keep up the good work?
And thank you for the support. And to answer that question, I think that the Russian retreat is not a trap, or the Russian retreat is not a trap. I believe it's entirely for, I guess you could say, strategic reasons. They can no longer hold the northern Kherson area due to a lack of supplies and also viable manpower, and so it will lessen their strain across the entirety of the battlefield if they were to move to a much more defensible position across the Dnipro River. That's kind of how I'm looking at it in a nutshell, but of course, I can always be wrong, but that's what we saw about 2 weeks ago, and I said about 2 weeks ago, and it's finally officially been stated by the Russians now. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Smart Lucker, who says, "You two amaze me at all the time with the work y'all put in. Me being 20, watching y'all put this time in astounds me. Please check out my hometown of Dublin, California. Nothing too impressive, but keep on keeping on, enforcers, and money to Poland fund."
And thank you so much for the support. And of course, you've been around for a while, and I thank you so much for enjoying this. We do put in a lot of effort. I couldn't really see doing it any other way at this point. I'd spend almost 50 hours a week on this, just the streams alone, and then, you know, do full-time college and all that stuff. And it is a lot, but at this point, I couldn't see it doing it any other way. I enjoy doing it a lot, but of course it is a lot of effort, and sometimes it does get a little bit tiresome. But Dublin, California, not a lot. Well, it's attached to a lot, so let's see what's down in Dublin. Anything Irish? Suburbs.
I bet these homes go for $1 million.
Yeah, I bet you they do. It's in California, it seems like property values are incredibly high. And this looks like it would be incredibly high. Also, all these houses look like they were like made in the 50s, you know, like that kind of like cookie cutter suburb kind of thing.
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty cool, actually, though. It's pretty neat. It's what you would think California would look like. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and also letting us take a look at this little town of Dublin, California. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the appreciation of the channel. It does mean a lot to us. It helps us to keep this thing running. And of course, without your support, it wouldn't be possible for us to run these streams every single day of the week, except for Monday. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Cerner Vikinger, who puts in a smiley face.
And thank you so much for the support, Cerner Vikinger. And thank you so much.
Right.
And, right. Yeah, right. And so thank you so much.
Amen.
Amen, brother. And so thank you so much once again for throwing in a little smiley face. And I thank you so much for throwing in the support. It helps this channel to keep on running. And without viewers like y'all who support this channel, it wouldn't be possible for us to stay afloat. Of course, whenever I say that, that's not, and you know, I was thinking maybe it comes off like that. That's not me trying to pressure anyone into supporting the channel. That's just me telling supporters that by their efforts, by their support, we are able to stay alive, because that is true. We don't get any ad revenue off of these streams. They're ad-free, and we make them that way because I honestly think it's a little cheap to over-monetize this, because of course we have to make a living off of it. This is a 50-hour job, more than full-time in a normal job, so you know, I don't really have time to go and, you know, say work at McDonald's so that way I can scrape by a living at Publix or something and then come back and do these streams, because I wouldn't have time to do both. So, of course, they keep these streams alive, but at the same time, I don't like the idea of running a sponsorship on a stream about war, and I also don't like the idea of running ads as well. It's kind of a little, it really makes it look like this whole thing is commercialized for the point of just trying to suck as much as you can off of it. It doesn't look good to me. That's why we don't do those things, and that's why we rely entirely on y'all's support. And so I thank you so much once again, Cerner Vikinger, for helping out this channel. It's the only way we keep running, and of course, without it, this wouldn't be possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from David Prange, who says, "Did you see the human turret toss carried by the sun? Might be too sketchy, question mark."
I think I did see that. If you're talking about the one where an ATGM hit a tank and then that guy went flying across the field, I did see that, and we cannot show that on stream because that is a little too graphic. While it doesn't show a lot of gore, the sight of a human flying through the air like a cartwheel. I also saw two videos that were similar to that, one with the bunker, one with the tank. It's a little bit too much for the stream, and so we cannot show that on here. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well. I have seen it before, but I don't think we could show it. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Miss Disa, who says, "What is the worry of booby traps all around Kherson? I haven't seen many videos like earlier ones with traps in homes, woods, ammo boxes, etc."
And there is the chance for the occasional trap to be set up, but by and large, from what we've seen by the Russians, the chances of a trap really being set up is low. You know, of course, that that can vary from house to house, place to place, but in the area of Balaklia, all the way from Balaklia to Izium, and then all the way towards Kupiansk, there was not really a lot of booby traps that the Ukrainians had to deal with. And so for that reason, I feel like if they withdraw from the Kherson area, it will most likely be very similar in terms of the amount of traps that have been set up. There's probably going to be very little of them, and if there are, they'll be easily found and most likely diffused. And so with that, I hope I addressed that question fairly well. I know it's a little bit of a short answer, but I feel like every time the Russians retreat, a lot of the same fears come up each time, and I think they're and usually why I'm like, oh, it's just, it's not going to be a big deal, is because I feel like a lot of these fears are being perpetrated by people who want folks to still think that the Russians have some kind of intelligence and they're smart. But from what we've seen, they're not, at least in terms of carrying out this war. And so I don't really put a lot of confidence in them to do any of these things because they've shown us time and time again they can't. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the question fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Phil Tatham once again, who says, if you gentlemen would please take another question from the ranks and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support, and we will take another question from the ranks, and also Slava Ukraine. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the question goes to Stothel, who says, should the U.S. provide Davy Crockett systems to the Ukrainians to counter Russian nuke threats?
You know what the Davy Crockett is, Matthew?
The fella?
No, no. The Davy Crockett is a small tactical nuke that was designed in the 50s and the 60s, I believe, to be fired off by the U.S. Army whenever a war broke out. You can see one right here.
That's like the mini nuke off of Fallout 4, isn't it?
It actually was inspired off of the Davy Crockett, that little mini nuke in Fallout 4. Also, you can see a lot of similarities in between this thing and an SPG-9.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and
it's like comical. That's like comical looking, like the warhead on the end of it.
Well, I mean, the effects weren't that comical. This thing actually had a decent amount of megatons for its size. You can see right here that its blast yield is equivalent to 20 tons of TNT.
Damn.
Yeah,
wait a minute. 20 tons of TNT?
Yeah, but think about it. This thing is like the size of like a 50-pound bomb, and it's got the explosive force of 20 tons of TNT.
Now, let's see. I'm thinking about kilo. So that's tons. So kilotons are a whole bunch more than that. So I was just thinking in terms of the nuclear video that I made. I was trying to like reference that. So if a big one does 450,000 kilotons,
I think
it's 450 kilotons?
I think it's 450 kilotons. 450,000 would destroy the Earth.
All right. Well, then this one's powerful, but it's not like insanely powerful.
It's not that powerful, but still, it packs quite a punch for the size. Also, what is the range? The effective firing range of this thing on the M29 is 2.5 miles, so it's not that far, but it still does a decent amount of damage. So with that in mind, and to get back to talking about this thing, it is incredibly old. I don't even think we have any of these things in storage anymore. Also, you can see illustrations here of how they load it. There's the charge being loaded. And then we move on into the next picture, and we can see the launch piston being inserted. And then in the last picture, we can see them putting on the fat nuke. That really does look comical, man. Dude, that looks like something out of a cartoon. It's like, okay.
What are they standing in, like one of those like insane asylum rooms where it's all white?
I guess. I don't really know. Maybe they photoshopped them into that. We can also see the mushroom cloud caused by this thing. It's a really small one, actually. Of course, it's only 20 tons equivalent. And we can also see, what is this? The Little Feller 1 nuclear test site in 2008. Interesting. Anyways, getting back to this. Other uses, museum examples. What happened to the thing, though? Launcher, practice rounds, nuclear round history. In 2005, the Army announced that it uncovered 600 pounds of depleted uranium from the training sites used for the Davy Crockett's inert rounds to be practice fired. They said the 12,405 acres of land could likely be tainted by these training days. Huh. Okay. So let's see. It was removed from the U.S. Army in Europe by 1967. The last nuclear-equipped warhead was retired in 1971. So this thing is long ago. It's not around anymore at all. The last one was I guess you could say demilitarized in 1971, over 50 years ago. So it's not like we have any to give them, but still, it is an interesting concept. But still, if the Ukrainians use this small nuclear weapon in Ukraine, I think that the Russians would probably respond with a slightly larger yet small tactical nuke. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well, but still a pretty good one, because for a second there, until we knew it was retired almost 50 years ago, it did seem a little bit like an interesting idea. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Santiago Flores, who says, "Good evening, and I'm donating a live chat question. Enjoy."
And thank you so much for the support. And also, thank you so much for being around forever. I'm sorry, for some reason tonight, y'all, I feel like doing all of this stuff, like moving everything over here, has really worn me out. So I'm trying to like make sure I can focus. So I'm sorry if it does seem like I'm slipping every once in a while. I probably am. Anyways, getting back to that, I thank you so much once again, Santiago Flores, for the support. You've helped out this channel forever and helped us to keep this thing running. And so, of course, we're going to answer a live chat question in your honor. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question goes to Neil Hurst. And Neil says, "So the Russians are digging personal swimming pools for when they blow the dam, ?
Yes, and they're going to be swimming. Also, we
Yes.
might finally see the we might finally see the Zelenskyy Sands National Park turn into normal farm fields, because they will finally be irrigated. Also, this thing is entirely man-made. If y'all don't know anything about the Soviets, because for some reason these days, I don't know why, but it's almost made out that only the West caused massive ecological damage to certain parts of the world. Let me remind everyone of the Aral Sea. This used to be a whole sea. Now it's nothing more than a series of pools that are incredibly shallow. So, it is what it is. Also, you can see here what used to be a town, but it's no longer a town. You can also see the Star of Uzbekistan. Let's see the reviews on this thing. Bruh, no pics of corn stars. That's the first review.
They put a 1 star for that, too.
Yeah, some people are very picky about that kind of stuff. But anyways, with that, I hope we've addressed that question fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support, and also a pretty good joke. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Fly Eagles Fly once again, who says, "Eagles are 8-0. We'll try to support the channel, but we'll guarantee a $20 donation for each additional Eagles win. They usually are on Sundays, and I hear you do charity events."
And thank you so much for the support once again, Fly Eagles Fly. You are brand new, and I believe this is the second time you supported this channel, and I thank you so much for taking us in and helping us to keep this thing running, because, of course, without viewers like you, it's not possible. And that is correct. Every Sunday, without fail, we have run a fundraiser for Ukraine. That means that you can come onto this channel, and that day, and I find this to be something interesting, and this is something that kind of retorts to the haters, which we haven't commented on in, I feel like, a few weeks, but a lot of our haters say that we do this entirely for the purpose, if you look over the whole thing, I mean, like, it's kind of true for some YouTubers, entirely just to capitalize and profit off of this war. And on Sundays, we don't make a dime. I go through the whole hour effort of doing 7 hours of this stuff, both the stream and the research beforehand. Even, sometimes, really on Sundays it's even more. It's like 8 hours, because then I have to go through and set up the whole fundraiser and do all that stuff. And Matthew and me do that absolutely free of charge. And the whole reason we do it, and we don't make a dime that day, is because we support Ukraine those days and we run fundraisers on them. And so what we do is we set up the fundraiser and we just run the stream. And so if the Eagles do win, come in on Sunday and support one of the Sunday fundraisers. It helps out Ukraine. We pick nonprofits that are registered in the United States. We do it through the YouTube Give system, so it's incredibly safe. We always want to make sure that the viewers are safe whenever they're supporting anything, because I don't like the idea, and while everyone doesn't like to think about this, there are people out there who will straight up scam off of this war and say something like, "Hey guys, like, I'm so-and-so, I'm Ben and Jerry, I'm from Lublin in Poland, and I'm going to buy a drone and I'm going to fly to Ukraine and drop bomblets on people. If you give me $50,000, I can go do that, and then you give them $50,000 and they disappear off the face of the earth. Or, you know, there's other ways you can do that, but that gets the general gist across. We don't want to put people in that position where that could happen to them, and we also don't want them to have to make that discernment whether the stream and whether they trust me or not, me enough to support a fundraiser. So we always do it through YouTube Give. So yes, we do run Sunday fundraisers, and if they win, come in and support the Sunday fundraiser. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again, Fly Eagles Fly, for the support. And I hope we answered that question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, Fly Eagles Fly wanted me to add Slava Ukraine to a super chat.
And also, Slava Ukraine. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a question from, let's see here, VPCZX, who puts in a $15 donation and says, this is for 3 live chat questions on me from Brother Kazakh at Enforcer.
And I thank you so much for the support, but one thing I do have to say is that we do have a limit. If you send in 1 super chat, it's 1 live chat. The reason being, and of course it's like, why? You know, let me explain this real quick. If we were able to allow everyone to throw in however many live chats they want to answer, let's say someone threw in a $50 super chat and said, I want 10 live chats answered, and then someone threw in a $20 super chat and they wanted 5 live chats answered, then we are eating up an incredibly large amount of time answering a whole load of questions. And so to make sure that we can get around to as many questions as we can, and also all of the super chats, and then get to live chats, we can only limit it to 1, sadly. But I do thank you for the support, and we will answer a live chat in your honor. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the question goes to Justin Norse, who says, could North Korea's failed ballistic launch be done on purpose, sending a message next imperfect one, could be nuclear?
And are you saying a failed nuclear launch on the part of the Russians?
No, he said, could North Korea's failed ballistic launch be done on purpose, sending a message next imperfect one, could be nuclear?
I don't think so, because the North Koreans don't work that way. Every time the North Koreans do anything, it has to be perfect. It has to be a success. It has to be blowing everything out of the water. The best there ever was. It exceeded every quota. The party has never been better, and it's getting better every day. The citizens are flourishing. They don't work off of something like that. A failure like that is not planned. And it also isn't good for the propaganda cameras. And so, for that reason, I feel like the failure, and I haven't really been following a lot of information on that one, so I'm assuming there was a failure. If there is a failure, or if there was a failure, that was most likely not planned. It was most likely planned to work the first time. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $15 super chat from Susan L. UK, who says, thought you lived with your parents.
And thank you for the support, Susan L. And you are correct. We did live with our parents. We will probably be living with them again here soon, because of what we're having to deal with the apartment and the. And so with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next, big shout out to Lala, BC Skyman, and also I Hate Mondays once again for each putting in a $10 super chat, but without a comment. Thank you very much to all 3 of you once again for that support, and thank you for watching for a very long time. And Enforcer, go ahead.
And of course, I thank y'all for the support. Helps this channel keep on running, and while y'all didn't throw in a comment, y'all's support does say a lot to us, which means that we should keep running this stream, and of course, y'all are helping us to do so. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope y'all enjoy hearing me say that like a broken record. I really wish I could come up with new ways to say this stuff all the time, but sadly, for some reason, once I say it one way, I almost say it like that every single time. But truly and sincerely, thank you so much once again. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you.
All right, and moving right along to our next one, we have a super chat from Squamous Tarkus, who puts in a $10 donation and says, do you think many and any returned POWs are fighting again? Love you guys.
I think some of them are. We don't know exact information on which POWs and how many, but we have seen, I believe, 1 or 3 of them on film return to the front lines. So that is happening. We just don't know how much. And so unfortunately, I can't give you exact breakdowns or figure on that, but we do know that it is happening at least somewhat and seen on film. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And also, real quick, just about the apartment thing. Let me know in the chat if y'all could actually hear the banging and somebody yelling in the actual audio.
I actually listened a little bit earlier, and all you could hear at one point was, and then I had said, it sounds like a door is screeching. And then at one point, when I was sitting there saying, hey, go around there, and you could hear like a little boom, boom, like a little bit in the background, but you couldn't really hear much.
I'll have to go back and listen to that because I'm kind of curious to what it actually sounded like at this point. But I thought it was a joke the whole time, but apparently, obviously, it wasn't. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat before we get back down the rabbit hole. We have a $10 donation from Mech Tactical once again, who says there seems to be a huge disparity between armored vehicles lost and troops lost. How the troops get to where they are without adequate armored vehicles, please theorize.
Most likely by trucks, although we know that they don't have a large amount of trucks, so either by rail and then I don't know, I guess they walk? I'm not really sure. Maybe by APC. Yeah, the APCs would probably be the way that they move. Of course, while they've lost thousands of them, they still have thousands that they're trying to pull out of deep, I guess you could say, positions in Siberia. And so, with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well. It's mostly likely by APCs or the few trucks they have or civilian commandeered vehicles. We've also seen them get transported a lot on charter buses because, that starts to fill up the gap, the transport gap fairly well. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Oats Air, who says, Enforcer, you should try pineapple chicken pasta someday. But now it's time to get a question from the chat. Thank you, LSA and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much once again for the support. And I thank you for enjoying this channel. We go through a decent amount of effort. And of course, it isn't always a cakewalk, but that's not really fun to talk about. Thank you so much once again for the support, though. It helps us out to keep this channel running. And without y'all, this wouldn't be possible. And so with that, I thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Well, real quick, they did request a live chat, so it goes to it goes to Bremner's Ghost, who says, any news on the partisan attacks in Melitopol? Not seen any images from rumors. Wait a minute. I have not seen any images, but from rumors, they say they're giving the Russians a bad time over the last 2 days.
From what we've seen before, there are some partisan attacks in Melitopol. We don't get a lot of information on them to really get an idea of what's happening there, though we have seen it happen before. We've also seen some attacks happening in Berdyansk as well. We've actually seen a couple of people get assassinated by the partisans, so it is something that's happening, but we don't have a gauge on how well, because that information is heavily controlled by the Russians, and that's one thing that they can do well. And so with that, I hope that does address the question, and thank you so much once again for sponsoring a live chat. I completely missed and forgot that we were supposed to do that, but of course, thank you so much once again, and I hope we were able to address that question fairly well.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Pooker1228, who says, keep up the good work, Leaf Spring Army from America. Please answer a question in the chat.
And thank you so much once again for the support. A lot of y'all are like saying the same thing tonight. Like, thank you for the stream and live chat. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I thank you for enjoying the stream. It does mean a lot to me, and we will make sure to answer a live chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat goes to Salty Squid, who I'm not sure if that is old Salty Squid or not, but if it is, it's good to see you once again. Salty Squid says, Enforcer, if Russia is setting up a trap, how are they going to hide the buildup of their forces without being seen by satellite and aerial reconnaissance from Western forces?
They won't really be able to hide that. And also, that wouldn't make... to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you're going to be giving up a lot of land around Kherson, and I'm assuming that the defensive position would be something like this. Oh, 1 second, I'm trying to make sure I get it right. Like, the defensive positions would be shaped like that. pumping in a whole bunch of forces into a small area like that and then creating a quote-unquote trap, it doesn't make a lot of sense from a standpoint perspective. If there's not a lot of ground for them to move through, and that's a very small area to have such a high density of forces. So I feel like that wouldn't be the case. It'd be like shooting fish in a barrel at that point for Ukrainian artillerists, and also the Ukrainian infantry, because you could really shoot anywhere and hit a Russian. And so with that, I feel like it's highly unlikely. And so I hope I was able to answer that question fairly well. And also, that is Old Salty Squid. It's good to see you again. We haven't heard from you in a while, and I hope you've been doing well. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope we addressed that live chat fairly well. And also, thank you so much for sponsoring one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Carson Larimore, who says, here's an idea. Maybe towards the end of the news, you can save a clip for the orc bloopers and blunders of the day. That might piss the bots off fantastically.
And thank you for the support, and a pretty interesting idea. We may put that into consideration. It's always hard to include something constant like that, because sometimes there are no bloopers of the day on the Russians. You know, you just see them get obliterated like in 20 clips. So I'm not sure if it'd be feasible, but it is a pretty cool idea. I like it. And so with that, I thank you so much for support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Craig Platel, who says, latest news for Kerch Bridge. 2 rail section need replaced, completion September 23rd. 4 additional road section need replaced. Full 4 lanes, completion March 23.
And I thank you for the support and also sharing that with us. That may mean that the railroad bridge has been entirely knocked out, but I'm not incredibly sure. The information on that is a little bit hazy, but based off of what you're saying, the entire bridge has practically been knocked out. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support and the info. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
Right, and moving right along, up next, we have a $10 super chat from the Ukester, who says, what do you think of the statement today by a popular U.S. congressional representative who said, under a quote-unquote specific political party, not another penny will go to Ukraine?
Well, I think that's not really a true statement. It's practically a lie, and politicians do that quite often. One thing that a lot of people don't realize, and let me real quick, I'll just name off the parties so that way it can clearly be seen. The war in Iraq was started by the Republicans, the Democrats then got in charge, and the war continued for quite a while afterwards. Well, there was no change. And I remember, and I was a young kid when this was happening, I remember that the Democrats were going, oh, the war is terrible, we need to end it now. Then they got in charge, they won the election, and then the war continued. And so, that was, I guess... Alright, so it looks like our OBS is reconnected again. And so, we're going to get back to this. And of course, this isn't being political, but this is going to be making a point real quick. So Afghanistan, let's go look at that with the U.S. Started by Republicans, of course, under George Bush. The war then continued under Obama. Then Obama was then superseded by Trump, and the war continued. Of course, the war started to die down right near the end of Trump's term, and then a Democrat took charge again, but by that point, the decision and the fate of Afghanistan had already been sealed by the previous administration, so the troops had to be pulled out, and then the country quickly collapsed. You can see, though, that it went through 3 flips right there. Started off with a Republican, went with a Democrat, and then went back to a Republican. But the war continued through all 3 terms. It only ended after 20 years because at that time, and when it was while the withdrawal was about to happen, we had made an agreement with the Mujahideen and the Taliban that they would no longer continue to attack American soldiers or hopefully the Afghan government. But really, once we left, that was beyond our control. And then we started to leave, and then they attacked the Afghan government, and it collapsed, and by then, we were largely out of control of the situation, so we couldn't really do anything about it. The same thing is going to happen with Ukraine, and you can remember, and one thing, let me say this, every time election cycle came around in those 2 wars, whichever party was not in charge was saying, we knew the war was a mistake, it was not right to get in that war, and we need to withdraw our troops immediately, and then they would get in office, and then the war would keep going, because there are interests involved, and that's one thing that a politician won't tell anyone, and that's one thing that their cabinet will tell them once they get in charge, or during I guess you could say, a congressional briefing, is that they'll tell them this is within our sphere of interest to keep things going in these areas because this benefits the United States through A, B, and C. So that's why those wars kept going, even when you would sit there around election time and hear the minority party say, it's not right, we shouldn't be there, we should leave. Right now, that's what's happening with Ukraine. One party is saying that we should support the war because they're in charge, and so they get to make the final call on the decision. The war is good. We need to keep going. And it is. It's good. It benefits Ukraine. It benefits us. It needs to keep going so that way they can win. And right now, there's one party saying, on the other side, the war is not good. The Russians are the good guys, and we need to get out of there. And we don't need to be we don't need to be supporting them at all anymore. But I can guarantee you this: if that party won the midterms and then they controlled Congress, you would see them do a little bit. It would look like they were going to not support Ukraine, but then they would immediately start to support them again. You've got to remember, the last administration that was in charge, which was under a different party here in the United States, was supporting Ukraine then. That's why Ukraine at the beginning of this war had TOW launchers and also Humvees. It was because they supported Ukraine. So you can kind of see, and also, another thing, when they were supporting Ukraine, everyone was calling that administration a warmonger and a saber rattler because we shouldn't be supporting anyone overseas. We should be focusing about the problems at home because there's all these starving homeless people that money could be going to help. That is just a typical political ploy. That's why I don't get into party stuff a lot, because all of it's usually just a bunch of hocus-pocus bull to try and draw votes. There's a one-tracked option for the United States here. Ukraine's within our sphere of interest, so regardless of who's really in charge, they're going to support Ukraine, even though they won't say that right now. So I don't really have too big of a whine or a gripe. It's all just party talk to try and garner some votes, and then they'll just do whatever is in our interest to keep doing, and it's to continue this war and make sure that our interests are supported. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well. Not getting political here, because of course getting political on this channel is picking a side and saying one side's right or not. One thing I'm trying to show right here and removing some of our name rules is that there is kind of a one-tracked option that the U.S. has to take in some instances, and this is one of those options. So while it'll look like on the political level there's a side for it and against it, if those sides flip, and if those sides flip in terms of who's in power at the time, the opinions will also flip immediately. You can see that on a whole bunch of stuff that happened in the past 4 years. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. I hope everyone gets to that. It's not political, but explaining how, I guess you could say, the political situation with these kinds of things unfolds here in this country. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from OSO, who does not leave a comment, but thank you very much for that support, and we do appreciate it very much. We also have a $10 donation from Crazy Wrath, who says, been with you guys since day 10 and just figured out chat.
And thank you so much for the support. And also, thank you so much for enjoying the stream. It takes a while sometimes for people to get how the chat works. It works differently on some things like the phone, so that may be the reason why, because I honestly find it a little difficult to work on the phone. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel keep on running. And welcome to the live chat, which is probably one of the funnest features of a live stream, is being able to talk with everyone and me, because while we can't address every single comment that comes in, because I checked last night's stream, we had 21,000 comments come in. We do read all of them. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And I literally read every single one of them as they come in, because I have to moderate every single thing in the live chat. So out of all those thousands and thousands of messages every single night, I read all of them, which is crazy to say, but somehow I do it. But anyways, up next, we have a $10 donation from Sausage Gravy Biscuit, who says, Slava Ukraine. Consistent donations are key. Matt and Enforcer need new shoes and textbooks. Love the show, guys.
And thank you so much for the support. Of course, a Sausage Gravy Biscuit. And I thank you so much for the continuous support. Of course, continuous support does mean a lot to us, because it helps us to keep this thing running, and it helps us to know that people will support us to keep us alive as we continue to do this stream. And so I thank you so much once again for the support, and I thank you so much for also helping us out with that as well. Also, one thing, real quick, to get back to this, because at times I feel like I ought to just be very brief and have a lot of brevity when talking about these things, but someone said that a certain news anchor is used as a soundbite on Russian propaganda. Let me say this real quick. If we go back, I'm trying to think if I should say this on stream. I don't really feel like this is a political thing. I think this is just showing a little bit of a truth here. When COVID was a thing, the vaccine was originally created by the party that was in charge at that time. And of course, I bet all of y'all knew who that was. And so everyone was all in that party. Everyone was all on board with that vaccine because it was being made by them. And and this whole entire project was being spearheaded by that group. And so they were like, "Oh, it's great, it's brilliant. You gotta try it. You know, we're gonna hurry."
And enforcer. I would not go anywhere near that topic.
Well, real quick though, it's
because YouTube takes very, very, very unkindly to that topic.
Well, I mean, like you've said some stuff about China though, and we haven't been had for that. You know, and that's even worse. So,
on this one, I can almost guarantee they're going to do something about it.
Well, real quick, I'll try and say it in the most vague terms possible. Then, it was made. The side that was not in charge said, we can't trust them, they're lunatics. It was made quickly with no testing. Then the election happened, the parties switched, and with it, the opinions switched immediately. Then one side said it was the best thing on earth, and the side that was in charge just months ago was saying that it couldn't be trusted because it was made too quickly. That's what happened. That's why, and this specific news anchor that you're talking about also flipped almost immediately. And so with that, I mean, all I gotta say is that these opinions, these statements that are made for the most part, I don't really put a lot of weight into them because they'll almost change on a dime depending on who's in charge. The opinions almost flip within days, and I beg y'all to please take a look at that whenever y'all see the next thing coming around, the next decision coming around, because you'll see that whenever an election happens and the sides flip, the side that gets in charge will do the exact same thing that the last group did, but then the group that was in charge just a moment ago will act like that was the worst thing to do on Earth. It's just how it works in situations like those, and I don't really know any other way to explain it. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have an $8 super chat from Colleen Emsley, who says, just wanted to thank Enforcer and Enforcer Matt so much for your great coverage. Really appreciate both of you. From Calling Lake in Alberta, Canada.
And thank you so much for the support and also helping us to keep this thing running. And also, Lake Alberta?
Calling Lake.
Oh, Calling Lake again! Oh, crap, I thought we were going to a new lake. Thank you so much once again for the support. And also, a huge hey to our friends up at Calling Lake. Of course, I love the story of all the helicopters that you flew before. You flew a whole bunch of classics. And so I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel keep alive. And it's cool to hear from our favorite helicopter pilot. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $7 super chat from VPCZX, who says, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, I hope y'all and the LSA Army have a good night.
And thank you so much for the support, and I hope you have a good night as well. Of course, sleep is incredibly important, and while I have been luckily getting a little bit of it recently, still don't get enough of it that I need. I always feel exhausted, but I hope that you will get enough sleep that you need, and so have a good night as well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Superbonker 9000, the NAFO member, for putting in a $6 donation, but without a comment. Superbonker, thanks once again for showing up, supporting the channel, and also being here almost every single night, and we do appreciate it very much. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Commander COVID-19, who says, buy some more wings, and read a question from the chat. I'm in Alpine, California, and Slava, Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support. And let's take a look at Alpine, California. Sounds like it's in a high place, you know, like because it's Alpine and all. So let's see here if it is. Kind of. I mean, like, it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of getting towards, I guess you could say, higher land. So let's take a look at this place. What's it look like here? Pretty cool. This kind of looks like Spain. Blame the Maine on Spain. But anyways, I thank you so much for the support. And I like how all of these have, like, Spanish terracotta roofs. I like that. That's pretty cool. And also, I just gotta say, Matthew, it looks like Spain.
It really does, actually. I like those Italian cypresses on the road.
Yeah, this is actually pretty neat. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty cool. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on running, and the kind words as well. They do mean a lot to us. I say that like a million times, but it really does. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Melissa Walters. And I think that's Melissa's first time supporting the channel. So if it is, welcome to the Leaf Spring Army. And also, thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, would you like to add anything to it?
Yes, I will. I thank you so much for the support, Melissa Walters. I believe that is the first time that you've ever supported this channel. And if it is, I thank you so much for it. Usually a new supporter helping this channel keep on running is a little rare. And so it is very nice to see that people every once in a while will help to support this channel that are brand new, because that helps us to keep alive and helps this thing to keep on running. And so thank you so much once again for the support. And also, I like the little emoji of the flying pear. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Victoria Obi, who says, first super chat, family friend lost his life fighting in Bakhmut on November 1st. Prayers to his wife and 2 children, and thank you, COF, what you do.
And thank you so much for the support, and I hate to hear about the loss. I'm sorry about that. But still, one thing that we are certain about is that while he may have died, he did die fighting for a greater cause, which is the defense of the entirety of Ukraine and keeping the Western world safe. And so one thing we can say is that his death was certainly not in vain. And I thank you so much for the support to this channel and helping us to keep running, so that way we can hear the stories of these brave men and continue to report on the situation on the front lines that all of these soldiers, the hundreds of thousands of them, are facing every single day as they continue to fight for practically the entirety of the world and its future. And so with that, I thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from CA Lags, who says, if the Ukraine do retake Kherson, don't they need to secure the dam and its canal as well? Otherwise, shipping through the Dnieper still won't go through.
They will need to retake the dam and the canal as well. That is true. But at the same time, I don't think the retaking of Kherson is more about it being the port. I think it's more so about its strategic importance in its population size. It is the only regional capital that the Russians have controlled over the entirety of this war, and they've never controlled another one. Mariupol, while being a major city, was not the, I guess you say, regional capital of Donetsk. Donetsk was. So with that in mind, I think it's more so about recapturing a strategically important town in terms of its administrative importance, more so than getting the river traffic flowing again, although it could be that the aim of that as well. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And thank you once again for the support.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Jay Spoon, who wants you to look up Ukraine trench art.
Ukraine trench art. Images. We got ourselves a guy with a shovel, a Russian with a toilet. Let's see.
It doesn't look like there's such thing as Ukraine trench art.
Sadly, on Google Images, it appears that there isn't, but I'm sure that there is out there, because there's always trench art in every war. And so, sadly, I don't think we'll be able to find it on stream, but I do thank you so much for the support. And if we could find it, I would certainly try and take a look at it. Also, that is a nice rifle right there. But
It really is. Look at that. Look at that bolt.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's nice all around. That is a nice rifle. Also, huge caliber shell, because look how big the casings are on the ground. It's like a 50 caliber. See, this is why I'm talking about we might need to get better internet here, because this is going to start happening again. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So up next we have let's see here. I think we might have come back, hopefully.
Yeah.
But anyways, up next we have a $5 super chat from Honeybee Care, who says, do you think that the Ukraine pilots are about to be sent to the U.S. for training will be returning to Ukraine to new to them fighters and A-10s?
That is a great question, and while I cannot give any official statements on that, the United States is always invested in the interests of Ukraine and always wants to help out in every category they can. And so I can, on this one, I do know the answer, but I don't really want to give it clearly because no one's given the answer clearly. But the United States is always willing to help out Ukraine every way they can. And so with that, I hope that kind of gives the answer in a way without really giving it. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to William Jones for putting in a $5 donation, along with Dupper Bob for putting in a $2 donation, and also Pubin. Thank you very much to all three of you for that support. Excuse me. I'm over here like choking. Thank you very much to all three of you for that support while I choke my way through that. But we do appreciate it very much. And also, Enforcer, do you have anything to add?
No. I'm just kidding. Thank you so much for the support. While Matthew dies of tuberculosis, let me tell y'all how this helps this stream to keep alive. You see how Matthew over there is dying from tuberculosis? Say hi, Matthew.
Hi.
Oh, you're supposed to sound sick and dying, but okay. Anyways, y'all's support helps me to get the tuberculosis medicine we need to keep him alive. That's things like water. There's things like a hot dog and a hot dog bun, and also maybe the occasional Costco's pizza, because that crap is bussin'. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to stay alive, because you help us to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again to all of y'all for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Stephen Hamaki, who says, everyone post the Enforcer to your social media at Steve Hardwater. LSA, can UK save Ukraine?
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And everyone, if y'all could do that, please do that. One thing that a lot of y'all may not know is that sharing this channel on your social media can help us to grow a massive amount. Of course, it spreads the word of our channel. More of your friends can see this channel and watch it, and if they like it, they too will share it. And so it kind of has a snowballing effect. And so make sure to share this around. That's a great idea. And of course, it helps us to keep this thing growing. Also, thanks to the impressive work of PsyOps, we have once again recuperated the lost 600 likes that got deleted earlier, and we're now up to 6,500 again. And so thanks to PsyOps for plugging that like button in the live chat a whole load, because that really has helped us out to get back up to the likes we had a little while ago. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, and also plugging the like, sharing on social media as well.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Fly Eagle Fly once again, who says, I'm not rich by any means, but this is my way of saying yes. Do more international news.
And thank you so much for the support. And also, that is one thing we want to do, is more international news. I have an idea for a video series coming out in the future. It will not necessarily be about news from what I'm looking at, but I'm trying to get everything tacked down in the background right now, working on seeing about getting someone to make thumbnails, because from what I can see, I hardly saw any of it today, but it looks like it may be promising, maybe quite promising. And if they're watching, you know, like, I didn't really get to see him, but at least what I saw a little bit looked promising. And so hopefully we will be having an incredibly interesting video series come out in the future that may be on world news sometimes, but maybe on other things other times, mostly about war and history. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep alive. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $2 super chat from CA Lags, who says, the autoloader is why you don't wear a necktie. Yes, I wouldn't wear a necktie around the autoloader because it would probably snatch you right up into the mechanism.
Okay, I see now, I see. Also, in case y'all didn't know, the long scarves that people used to wear back in the early 1900s kind of came out of style after the car came around, because one time a fairly famous actress was wearing one of those long scarves in the car, and it was so long it got caught in the tire axle and it snapped her neck and killed her while she was driving the car. So that's one of the reasons why you don't wear that kind of stuff around moving equipment and machinery. So with that, I would entirely have to agree now that I understand the context. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $2 super chat from Philip Fixes once again. And also, before I read it off, Philip did clarify last night that this is not a house or his address, so we can read it off tonight. He puts in a $2 donation and says 501 West South Street, Orlando, parking garage art.
West South Street, Orlando. There's a lot of 501 West South Streets. bud. Let's see. Florida. Orlando, Florida. There we go. So let's see this art.
Wow, that's a nice area, by the way.
Oh, what is this? Is that like some kind of like a little video game reference or something like that? That's pretty interesting. That's pretty cool. I've never seen wall art like that before. I was expecting like a mural or a painting or something. Wasn't expecting guys on ladders climbing from level to level. That's pretty cool. And also, like, geez, there's like 1 million security cameras on that wall too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, no, those are spotlights. Sorry. Wait, only 1, 2. No. It looks like there's only 1 security camera there. I just counted a whole bunch of spotlights as security cameras. Anyways, with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope you enjoyed us taking a look at this wall art. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have another super chat from Sausage Gravy Biscuit, who this time puts in a $5 donation and says, how do you know this scarf stuff? And also Slava Ukraine once again.
And I thank you so much for the support, Sausage Gravy Biscuit. I don't really remember how I learned it. I just know it, and then I retain it. That's one thing that's kind of a little unfortunate about me, is that I've just grown up reading and learning so much stuff that's like
unfortunate.
That's trivial. Yeah, it's very unfortunate because, one, it makes it very hard to talk to people, because when you sit there and talk to folks, they're just chit-chatting and stuff, and you're like, hey, isn't that kind of weird that the Carthaginians' lands were salted, yet they can now grow crops there a little bit? Isn't that kind of weird? You know, you sit there and you talk about stuff, you know, like, who in the world would even know? But, and also other weird crap, you know, like, you know, Matthew lives around me, you know what I'm talking about, you know, like chimney sweeps and crap like that. So it's kind of unfortunate because, one, it makes it hard to just throw in interesting comments, because I've spent my whole life growing up learning that kind of stuff. So while it's interesting, sometimes it doesn't really fit well in the conversation. The other thing is that I also don't know where it comes from. Like, I forgot where I actually read that information. I just retain it, and I can regurgitate it whenever I'm kind of like given like a trigger of a certain thing that just makes me remember that stuff. And they'll be like, oh, look, you know, I'm like the Manchurian Candidate. It's like rail car, orange, blue. Oh, yeah, I forgot about the scarf lady. And then, you know, I just say something like that. So I don't really know, but that's a great question. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Papu, who says it's only to say hi, and from Montreal, Quebec.
And thank you so much once again for the support from Montreal, Quebec. We have taken a look at that city before, and it is a nice one. We will drop down there again, though, because the last time we did it, it was by mistake. So let's drop down around the Notre Dame Basilica of Montreal. Oh, wow, this is a cool place. That is really nice. Tall building, eh? But what about that basilica down here? Well, that is pretty cool. I like this place. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. Also, flag of Quebec right there. And also, I don't even know what the flag of that one is. But with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the support and letting us take a look at your city of Montreal. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have a few more super chats here until we get to our live chat questions. Up next, we have a $2 donation once more from Sausage Gravy Biscuit, who says YouTube sucks. And we also have a $1 donation from Marc-Andre Burnett, who says Ukraine rocks.
And thank you so much to both of y'all. Yes, Sausage Gravy Biscuit, YouTube is not the most ideal in some ways, but we have to take it into stride. And also, I thank you so much for the support and saying that we rock, because you rock for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it alive. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you to both of y'all.
And the final super chat goes to James Dunn, who puts in a $2 donation and says, do you plan on getting memberships?
No, we will never do memberships. That's a question we get asked often. I feel like it capitalizes too much on this live stream. And let me say this before I say the next thing. We will never do this, but I am saying it because it seems like it's a slippery slope with everyone that does it. Memberships come in, people get little colorful names, people get it, and then you start sitting there and you try and make it a membership chat only. I've seen that happen on like 6 different channels. I think it's not really nice. I don't really think it's right. Live chats are there for people to have fun and engage in. It's not supposed to be something where you try and capitalize it and make it like a pay-to-play kind of thing. I don't like doing live chats like that. I think if people do want to support this channel, they also shouldn't be harassed by that little window that pops up going, hey, you need to become a member. Get a membership now. And then you got X out of that thing and then it stays in the bottom left corner of your screen. I don't like that. I feel like it makes this tacky. And so we will never do memberships because, one, it seems a little bit too capitalized, for what we're covering. And also, it's kind of a slippery slope because then everyone always goes and does the channel membership live chats only. But with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. Thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are now going to move on to answer a couple of live chats. We're going to answer 5 of them due to time constraints. And also, thank you so much, John Wickhand, for the $25 of support. That's helps our channel greatly. You didn't even throw in a comment. But thank you so much once again. It really does help. And so with that, let's get to these 5 super chats.
All right, and up first we have one from Packrat, who says, how much longer before we see more and more Russian officials dissenting and or meeting a window, since more and more are dying in this war on the battlefield and in Russia? And Packrat, it's actually going on right now.
It is going on right now. There are people falling out of windows as we speak. It will most likely begin to decrease because the dissent will become quiet and organized as they try and figure out plans, but then it will quickly escalate again, probably higher than any level we've seen before. And so with that, I hope that does address the question, Packrat, and also a pretty good one. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Rodent of Anger, who says, question for the Enforcer, can the Ukrainians just surround and siege Kherson close to the wintertime and let the Russians starve?
That's one thing they could do, but they can never actually besiege the city because of the Dnipro River. They would have to cross it, then go through this bog marsh that's about 1.5 miles thick, to then try and encircle the Russians from the other side, which would be physically impossible for the most part. So they could besiege it in a way from 3 sides, but they wouldn't be able to cut it off entirely from its supply lines and push and force the Russians to surrender because of that reason. It would be very similar to Stalingrad. You would have to go in there and actually push them across the river. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and let's see here. We also have our Morse code decoders of the stream, Old Scrolls, which is, I believe, Mark Hodges with a new name. Also, Draconiate and BME. They say that the Morse code reads, some people said the Russians will never leave Kherson, and now the Russians said they have been Slava Ukraine.
And that is correct. Y'all did get the Morse code correct. They have been pushed. They are retreating across the Kherson River. And I remember when I said that 2 weeks ago, there were a couple of people in the live chat saying they're not doing that. That's not true. It's clickbait. And then there was people on YouTube. One of them, I won't say that, but anyways, one of them clearly said, and I remember it, no, the Russians aren't leaving Kherson. They are not going to do that for at least the next 2 months, and now they've officially said they are, and we've seen the evidence that they've been doing that for quite a while. And so y'all did get the message correct. That is happening. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up we have a question from Sittin' and Thinking, who says, might Ukraine attempt a surprise crossing of the Dnipro to cause a rapid collapse of Russian lines as in the Kharkiv region? Challenge for sure.
And I would say, unlike the northeastern area where they crossed the Oskol River, I believe. Yeah, the Oskol River in Kupiansk, which is incredibly narrow, and so it is quite easy to cross. Like, look at this right here. This is just, like, hell, it's about as wide as a car in this area. You can literally walk across it. Unlike the Oskol River, which is incredibly narrow and easy to ford, the Dnipro River is not. It's a formidable size all across its entire length. And so it would be much more difficult to send forces across that river, especially because all of it is surrounded by marshy swampland as well, which is not conducive for getting vehicles across or anything similar. And so I would have to say it probably is not possible just for that instance alone. I could be wrong, and I would love to be proven wrong on this one, but still at the same time, just looking at it from a unbiased strategical standpoint, I just don't think it can happen. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and that viewer is Jorge Rivera, who says, is it a trap? They are going to blow the dam as soon Ukraine gets to the projected flooding zone.
Well, if they blow up the dam, one thing that we've already learned is that the dam facing where it is, and the majority of the hydrological forces that would be coming from the rupture, they would actually flood towards the Oleski Sands National Nature Park, and then kind of flood their way back into the Dnieper River, causing it to go over its banks, but it wouldn't be something that is catastrophic as it would be to the southern end of the river where the Russians would be. And so it's not going to be a trap in that regard, because that would actually be devastating more so for the Russians than anyone. And also, in terms of Kherson, and I actually just did see someone say this, Michael Johnson said, and also this is to add to this question, Matthew, he said, are they really leaving? Because other very credible channels are saying that they are fortifying the city even more and giving appearance that they are leaving. I will remind you, and of course, not trying to throw shade at experts or other YouTube channels or anything, but I remember when we looked at Balaklia and I said, oh, there's been a breakthrough, this is going to be a massive push. I believe almost every YouTube channel I ever got wind of that people told me about said, you're wrong, because the Russians are really doing that as a trap. It's all a trap. They're going to do something to the Ukrainians. They're falling face first into a trap, and then it never happened. It's not something that would happen. That wouldn't make a lot of sense, to increase the density of soldiers within a city like Kherson with almost no viable supply line across the river for them to just get obliterated. It just can't happen. I mean, like, if you're looking at that from a logical perspective, you're withdrawing troops because there's a lack of supplies and also a lack of manpower to hold the area. So for those two reasons, you're now going to be sending more men across the river, which will require more supplies, and it's also using up manpower that they really don't even have in that area. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And so for that reason, I would have to say it's definitely not a trap. They are legitimately retreating. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well. Also about the dam, which happened a little bit earlier in that question. And with that, that was our final.
And
live chat question.
also we have one more super chat to go that just came in from Walter A. Lakota Jr. He puts in a $100 donation and says, aloha, Enforcer Matt and LSA from OG Ellison Bosun. It seems that Russia army is probably trying to set a draw south of Kherson for Ukraine. It also seems that the Black Sea is looking the tanker wars in the 80s.
And thank you for the support, Walter A. Lakota. Of course, I forgot. Let me remember your titles. Let's see. It is Lord of the North Pacific, the Princely Duchy of the Snow Crab. And so I thank you so much for coming back to the stream and, of course, helping to support this channel. Your support is massive and helps us out a lot to keep running behind the scenes. And to address that, it seems the Russian army is probably trying to set a draw south of Kherson for Ukraine. A draw. I would have to say, yes, I would have to agree. It's most likely what they're trying to do is set up a draw where the Ukrainians can't really do anything and neither can the Russians. They'll both be deadlocked into defensive positions on both ends of the Dnieper River. And so I can entirely agree with that 100%. That's probably their plan. And of course, I can be wrong, but one thing I do want to say is that, you know, and of course this sounds arrogant as hell, but I gotta say, I have not been proven wrong so far on many things. Small trivial things, yes. Strategic things, not quite. I said 2 weeks ago, it looks like the Russians are retreating. Here's some evidence of abandoned positions. Everyone wanted to say, no, they're not. Now we're seeing that the Russians are saying that. So it's, you know, it is what's happening. Also, we're not going to go through the whole spiel, but anyways, it does appear that that's what they'll be doing. I could be wrong. There's always a chance every single time I say something that it can be wrong, but I have a pretty good feeling and I'm pretty confident that I'm right because that seems like the most straightforward, logical thing for them to do. But you know, there's always a chance that it's not. So anyways, it also seems the Black Sea is looking like the tanker wars in the 80s. I don't know about the tanker wars in the 80s in the Black Sea. So I would have to look into that a little bit more. I think you probably know a little bit more about that than me. So fill me in on that if you can. And I would be interested to know if it is looking like the tanker wars of the 80s. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support, Walter A. Lakota. You help out this stream a lot in helping us to keep running and helping us to stay alive behind the scenes. And for that, I thank you so much. And also, thank you so much for the $20 super chat from Ashley, who says, long live the Enforcer and the Lee Spring Army. What is this? Long live the king or something. But still, I thank you so much for the support. It does mean a lot. and I thank you so much for helping this channel to keep alive, and I thank you so much for wishing a long life to me. Maybe I will be long-lived, maybe I won't be. Only time will tell, but I thank you so much for the well wishes going my way, and of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, we have now reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank every single one of y'all so much for watching. If y'all have enjoyed the stream, please make sure to hit the like button and also subscribe. We've gotten 6,634 likes, and I'm sure that's only going to go up from here. Of course, every like lets YouTube know a little bit more that this stream is greatly appreciated by its viewers, and it should be pushed to more people because they too will also like these streams. And so with that, I thank all of y'all so much once again for, of course, watching this news. It's a great honor to think that 41,000 of y'all, as of right now, have watched tonight's news and have found it of worth to be able to spend your time on. And of course, I'm highly honored that y'all picked this channel out of all of them to watch your nightly news on. And so with that, I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on day 255 to cover the next 24 hours of the war in Ukraine. Thank you all once again. Have a great night. Stay safe. Take care. And we will see y'all then. Вічна слава Єлисим. Слава Україні.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького